For ages, Zen philosophies have provided a route to serene tranquility, achieved not through striving, but through letting go. The narratives you are about to hear have guided countless souls toward a sanctuary of calm. As we embark on this journey, feel free to share your location and the current time. Wherever you find yourself at this moment, you can allow yourself to settle in. There's nothing you need to achieve right now. No exam to conquer, no lesson to master. These tales will gently unfold, one after another, akin to waves lapping at the shore. This evening, we will delve into the insights of Zen Buddhism through timeless fables. Each narrative conveys a lesson about attaining stillness, revealing the peace that lies beneath our restless minds. These are not teachings to be memorized or fully comprehended. Rather, they are companions on your path to slumber. So, take a deep, calming breath, and let's commence our adventure together. By the shore, where waves continually crashed upon dark sand, and the air was rich with salt and fish scents, there lived an elderly man known in the village as the fisherman. No other name was ever recalled by the locals. He had fished these waters for so long that some of the older villagers claimed he was already old while they were still children. A young boy named T-Shi frequently visited to watch him work. At just 12, T-Shi was inquisitive and restless, the kind of child that was eager to understand everything, constantly questioning until the adults around him grew weary of his curiosity. His village school teachers acknowledged his brilliance, yet expressed concern over his struggle to accept things as they were. One day, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, turning the sea into shades of orange and purple, T-Shi spotted the old fisherman preparing his nets on the beach. The fisherman worked deliberately, verifying each knot, untangling each twist, his experienced hands moving effortlessly, as if executing the same moves countless times before. "Old man," T-Shi called out, seating himself on a nearby rock, "how do you determine where to cast your nets?" The fisherman, focusing intently on his task, didn't look up. He continued inspecting the nets, assessing their resilience, making minor adjustments. T-Shi waited impatiently. When silence lingered, he pressed on. The sea is expansive. The fish could be anywhere. How can you tell which places will yield fish and which won't? Still, the old man was mute. He gathered his nets, approached the water's edge, and with a practiced flick of his wrist, cast them into the waves. The nets soared wide through the air, striking a moment of beauty against the darkening skyline before disappearing beneath the surface. The fisherman stood still, grasping the rope, his gaze fixed on the shadowy water, his demeanor serene. Frustration churned within T-Shi. "You're not answering me. Do you not know? Or are you merely guessing?" The fisherman kept his silence. The tide lapped gently against the sand. A seabird screeched from somewhere within the approaching twilight. Minutes ticked away. T-Shi shifted restlessly on his rock, his mind racing with bustling thoughts. What if no fish were present? What if the fisherman was squandering his time? What if there existed a better approach, a more intelligent method, one that the old man was too prideful or dense to grasp? What if you catch nothing? T-Shi finally voiced, unable to tolerate the quiet any longer. The fisherman remained still, his hands resting on the rope, his eyes locked on the water. He appeared unmoved by either the question or Tisha's presence, simply existing in a state of calmness and patience. More moments progressed. As the sun touched the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the water, Tisha's anxiety escalated. He yearned to depart, to seek out someone who could answer his queries, yet something compelled him to remain perched on the rock, observing. At last, the fisherman began to retrieve his nets. His motions were smooth and unhurried. Hand over hand, the rope was drawn in. Water dripped from the fibers as the nets emerged from the depths. This time, they were full. Silver fish shimmered in the dwindling light, caught in the mesh, their bodies glinting as they struggled. The fisherman dragged the nets onto the shore and began to extract the fish one at a time, placing them into a wooden container. His silence persisted. Tishi rose and moved closer. But how did you know? How could you be certain they would be there? For the first time, the old man gazed directly at him. His eyes were clear and tranquil, filled with a hint of amusement. "No," he replied softly. "I didn't know." Tishi frowned, puzzled. "But you cast your nets. You chose that place." "I cast my nets," the fisherman confirmed. He resumed his task, gently setting the fish aside, even as they wriggled. "So, was it a guess? Was it?" The old man's tone remained inquisitive rather than defensive, as though he was contemplating the question for the first time. Tisha's frustration peaked. "You must have had some reason for picking that spot instead of another." The fisherman finished emptying his nets and began preparing them for another cast. "The fish move," he stated plainly. "The currents shift. The water is deep and dark. I cast where I cast. Sometimes I gather bountiful catches. Sometimes they are empty. Regardless, I bring them in and cast once more." "That's not an answer," Tishi retorted, his voice tense. "No," the old man acknowledged. "It's not." He made his way back to the water's edge, casting his nets into the darkening sea once more. They spread and fell. He stood, holding the rope, eyes glued to the water as stars began to light the sky above. Tishi wanted to leave. He longed to return to his cozy home, where his mother would have dinner prepared, where everything was predictable and logical. Yet, instead, he settled back onto his rock. Something about the old man's presence, his serene acceptance of uncertainty, kept Tishi rooted in place. They shared the quietude together, waiting for what would come next. The depths of the unknown. In the quiet of a moonlit night, all that could be heard were the gentle lapping of waves and the sporadic calls of seabirds swooping to hunt along the coastline. The fisherman, rooted in place as if he were a statue, gripped his net and stared at the waters he could not peer into. Each time he pulled in his nets, they came up bare. Only heaps of tangled seaweed and a few tiny crabs, which he carefully returned to the sea. "You see," Tishi remarked, unable to restrain himself, "you didn't catch anything again. If you truly knew what you were doing, you would have brought in some fish." The fisherman readied his nets once more. "Would I?" Naturally, that was the whole aim, right? To catch fish, wasn't it? The elderly man cast his nets again into the hidden waters. Tishi prepared to argue, but then paused. He recognized he didn't actually grasp what the point of it all was. He had presumed that the goal was to catch fish, to be skilled, to understand, and to succeed. However, the fisherman appeared unconcerned with notions of victory or defeat. He simply cast his nets and reeled them back in. That was all there was to it. They repeated this cycle 4 more times. First, nets brimming, then empty, then partially filled, followed again by emptiness. Each time, the old man reacted in the same manner. No cheers when the nets were full. No sighs of disappointment when they were not. Just the same tranquil focus, the same steady presence. As the night deepened and the moon illuminated the water, Tishi sensed a shift within himself. The restless urge to comprehend, to know, to have all the answers began to fade. Not because he had found clarity, but because he started to realize that the questions themselves could be the issue. "Old man," he finally spoke, his tone softening. "You really don't know, do you? You have no idea where the fish are, or if they'll show up, or why they might. Some nights the nets are filled and other nights they are empty." "No," the fisherman replied, "I don't know." "Doesn't that trouble you?" The old man sat in silence for a considerable time. "When I was younger, like you, it did indeed trouble me greatly. I wanted to comprehend everything. I longed to grasp the tides, the moon phases, the fish, and the currents. I sought a method that was perpetually effective, a knowledge that would invariably lead to success." He paused, examining his nets. "I spent years trying to decipher these things. I observed the phases of the moon. I studied where other fishermen cast their nets. I aimed to uncover the pattern, the secret." "And were you able to find it?" Tishi asked. "No," the old man replied simply. "What I found was something different instead." "What's that?" "I discovered that not knowing is sufficient, more than just enough. I learned that casting nets into dark waters without clarity isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's just the nature of casting nets into dark waters." He waved his hand towards the sea. "The water runs deep. The fish navigate their own desires. I am here, casting my nets, accepting whatever comes my way. Sometimes it's a lot, other times it's scarcely anything, and occasionally it's nothing at all. Yet here I am. The water remains. The night continues to be beautiful." Takashi contemplated this, mulling it over in his thoughts. But what about forethought? What about gaining knowledge? What about striving to improve? "Those concepts have their merits," the fisherman acknowledged. "I can repair nets. I know how to read the weather. I understand how to clean and preserve fish. Those are practical skills." He cast his nets once more. "Yet as for the fish themselves, whether they arrive or not, that's beyond my knowledge or control. So, I ceased attempting to know things that cannot be known. Upon letting go of the need to grasp what eludes understanding, I stumbled upon something peculiar." "What's that?" The uncertainty ceased being an issue. It transformed into just another facet of the night, akin to the sound of waves or the scent of salt. Something that simply exists rather than something to be rectified. They fell into a companionable silence. The nets floated somewhere in the depths. The stars revolved gently above. When the old man pulled in his nets this time, they were so overflowing that Tishi had to assist him in hauling them ashore. They worked under the moonlight, unloading fish upon fish, their hands cold and slick, carrying the unmistakable scent of the sea. "You see," the fisherman said, and Tishi thought he caught the faintest hint of a smile. "I still don't know," but the fish came nonetheless. As Tishi strolled home that evening, a peculiar tranquility filled his mind. The usual barrage of inquiries and the constant drive to understand and control had transformed into a gentler curiosity. Not the aggressive kind that demanded answers, but a soft, patient wonder that felt content simply to exist in curiosity. From that night forward, Tishi frequently returned to observe the old fisherman. He never discovered more answers, yet he gradually learned to live without them. This narrative resonates with a challenge we all face: the burden of needing to possess knowledge. We inhabit a world that prizes certainty, one that values those who hold answers and fosters discomfort with ambiguity. We occupy every void with explanations, striving to forecast every possibility. We exhaust ourselves endeavoring to understand things beyond comprehension. Though Tishi was a bright young man, his intelligence had weighed heavily upon him. He struggled to simply experience the present. He needed to interpret it, classify it, make sense of it. His thoughts never found respite as they were invariably occupied, perpetually learning, continually pressing for the world to align with his understanding. The old fisherman had unearthed a different wisdom. He learned that not knowing doesn't have to be an obstacle. It can merely be a truth, akin to the dark depths of the water or the erratic nature of fish. He cast his nets not from a place of knowledge, but from a place of presence. He stood there, night after night, not because he had deciphered the secrets of where fish might be, but because to stand with his nets in the dark waters was simply his way of being. In Zen philosophy, there's a principle about holding uncertainty lightly, not striving to erase it or transcend it, but finding comfort with it, even welcoming it. This doesn't equate to abandoning the quest for knowledge or growth or understanding what's within our grasp. It signifies acknowledgement that much of existence resembles fishing in dark waters, embracing the unknown. In the vast theater of life, we often find ourselves casting our nets, unsure of what awaits us. The fisherman, with his empty nets, remains unruffled by the lack of catch. He is not ensnared by any specific outcomes. His purpose is not to showcase his expertise or to validate his techniques. He simply fishes. Whether the fish meet his nets or not, he finds solace beneath the endless stars, fully engaged in a reality that transcends his limited perception. Imagine the sensation of throwing your nets without the clarity of what lies beneath. To take informed steps, make decisions, and navigate your existence while relinquishing the certainty of anticipated results. Not in a reckless or careless manner, but with the same grounded presence that the fisherman embodies in his vocation. The uncertainties will persist into tomorrow. The questions will remain unsolved. Nonetheless, for these fleeting moments of repose, you can lay down the weight of needing to comprehend everything. You can stand at the blurred boundary of sleep, much like the fisherman poised at the seashore, casting your nets into the obscurity and trusting in what may surface. In the mountains, where the dawn mist caresses the ancient pines, a trail meanders toward a monastery celebrated for its tranquil teachings. The path is arduous and steep, snaking through dense forests and rocky inclines where the air becomes thin and the ground shifts beneath footfalls. Many ambitious souls embark on this journey, yet few arrive without burdens. Kenji had been ascending since the break of dawn, having left the village below while the stars still twinkled in the twilight sky, resolute in his quest to reach the monastery before dusk. Now, under the unforgiving afternoon sun, the rocky path had become a true test of endurance. Yet, the heat was dwarfed by the immense weight he bore. Clinging to his back was a hefty bundle, almost as large as Kenji himself. It was swathed in dense cloth and secured with ropes that had carved deep lines into his shoulders over the lengthy journey. Inside were the remnants of his life gathered over 3 decades. Scrolls from his earlier years as an academic in the capital, when he believed that enlightenment would equate to tranquility. Tools from a time when he turned away from academia to embrace carpentry, thinking that craftsmanship would still the discontent within him. Tokens from friends he had lost contact with due to his relentless pursuit of an elusive something. Letters from his departed parents, which he carried but could not bring himself to read. A blanket, lovingly woven by his mother the winter before her passing, still imbued with her comforting scent. Books that once resonated with him, each promising a second reading that never arrived, as time slipped away like grains of sand. The straps bit into his shoulders, jarring through his robes. Each step upward sent tremors through his knees. Sweat soaked his garments, cascading from his brow onto the parched path. He gasped for air, pausing frequently, bent over with hands resting on his knees, battling to regain his breath. The monastery loomed impossibly high, its walls hazy and barely discernible through the shimmering heat. At a sharp curve in the trail, beneath a gnarled pine tree that leaned precariously from the rugged cliff, a frail old woman sat resting upon a flat stone. She was diminutive and delicate, her face a tapestry of wrinkles that hinted at a life spent amidst nature. Her hair, as white as snow, was neatly pulled back. Dressed in simple grey robes, she had a solitary walking stick propped beside her, with no additional belongings. Upon seeing Kenji struggle towards her, she greeted him with a smile that radiated warmth, reminiscent of his mother's embrace. "Take a moment's respite, young man," she called out with genuine concern. "You look as though you might collapse right here on the trail." Kenji gratefully eased his bundle onto the earth. The instant relief was so profound it nearly brought tears to his eyes. He settled on a nearby stone, gasping for breath, wiping the sweat from his brow with his sleeve. The old woman regarded him with her inquisitive, bright gaze. There was a serene quality about her that felt soothing, much like being close to a still lake. "What brings you this way?" she inquired. "To the monastery," Kenji managed to say between breaths. "At the peak, I wish to study with the monks there, to learn the art of meditation, to seek inner peace." He uttered the last phrase with more urgency than he had intended. The old woman's face remained impassive, yet something in her gaze hinted at comprehension. She glanced at his cumbersome bundle. "And you believe you need all of that to attain peace?" Kenji's defensiveness flared as he looked at his possessions. Immediately, his mind began rationalizing each item's significance. "These things are crucial," he replied. "Every item holds meaning and value. The scrolls possess wisdom from revered sages. The tools may prove beneficial. The letters, the blanket, these are the last fragments of my parents. I may require them." "May," the old woman echoed softly, contemplating the word as if savoring its essence. She offered no further commentary. She simply sat there with her walking stick, appearing as light and unconstrained as a leaf, as if she might float away with the next gust of wind. After a few minutes of shared silence, she stood with an unexpected ease for someone of her years, beginning to walk down the mountain path with a steady gait devoid of effort. Kenji watched her figure fade around a bend, her solitary stick rhythmically tapping against the stones. He lingered a moment longer, dreading the inevitable return to his burden. His shoulders already throbbed at the thought of lifting the load again. Nonetheless, the monastery still stood far above, and the afternoon hours dwindled. Delaying only meant he would find himself stranded on the mountain after dark. With a grunt, he hoisted the bundle once more onto his back. The weight settled heavily, a grim reminder of his struggles. His knees quaked under the pressure. He resumed his climb, yet the path now felt infinitely steeper. Each step sent pain ricocheting through him. His shoulders blazed. His back screamed for relief. Breathing became a challenge, the scant mountain air dizzying him. After a mere 20 steps, he was compelled to halt again, gasping, his vision clouding. The weight of the world around him felt almost suffocating. Fixing his gaze upon the pack that burdened him, Kenji's hand shook as he dug into it. His fingers brushed against a clay pot he'd kept from his old kitchen back in the capital. It was a pot he cherished, well-crafted and substantial. Yet, he wondered how long it had been since he had last utilized it. 6 months? A year? He couldn't recall. Carefully, he set the pot by the side of the trail, propped against a rock to keep it from rolling away. Perhaps someone else would find it useful. The weight on his back diminished slightly. As he ascended, he trudged onward, but after another 50 steps, the load became oppressive once more. Breathless, he paused to extract a set of carpentry tools. They were exquisite, costly, sharp, and well-kept. Kenji had invested a substantial amount on them, yet it had been over a year since he last worked with wood. He had promised himself he would return to carpentry someday, but that day never arrived. He delicately placed the tools beneath the shade of a nearby tree, wrapped in their cloth. As he pressed forward, he pulled off a thick winter coat, followed by a bundle of letters he had been carrying for months. These letters were from individuals he had encountered during his travels, people to whom he had vowed to respond but never managed to do so. Next, he discarded books whose pages he had long since memorized, books he once deemed indispensable. Finally, he came across a beautiful teapot, a gift wrapped in silk, still in his possession. With every item he laid down, he experienced a complex blend of relief and sadness. A part of him yearned to reclaim them, unwilling to abandon things that once held meaning. Yet, another, quieter part felt unburdened with each release. The climb gradually transformed into a more manageable endeavor. His breathing became steadier, his stride shortened. What had seemed like an insurmountable obstacle was evolving into a challenging yet conquerable path. By the time he arrived at the midpoint marked by a modest stone shrine, he had relinquished nearly all that weighed him down. His remaining pack now held just an extra set of clothes, a water flask, a thin blanket, and his mother's cherished woven blanket, which he couldn't bring himself to part with. The change was staggering. He could stand tall once more. He inhaled fully. The breeze felt refreshing against his skin rather than stifling. The sky appeared broader and blur. He finally began to appreciate the beauty surrounding him, the way the late afternoon light cast a golden hue on the rocks, the birds' calls echoing from the woods below, and the aroma of warm pine resin in the air. Approaching the monastery gates as the sun began its descent, Kenji saw something that made him pause in amazement. The elderly woman from earlier was there, seated on a stone bench near the entrance, her walking staff resting beside her. She gazed at the sun dipping toward the horizon, her expression serene. "How did you get here first?" Kenji began but stopped himself. It occurred to him that, of course, she had arrived before him, having carried only her stick and moving with the grace of someone who had already unlocked the knowledge he was just beginning to grasp. The woman smiled knowingly at him. "Did you discover what you were burdened with?" Kenji yearned to answer yes, yet he realized he didn't fully comprehend her question. He placed his small remaining bundle down and glanced back the way he had come. In the distance, he could make out several places where he had paused to let go of something, each marking a moment of determination, a choice to release. "I thought all of it was essential," he admitted softly. Each item held significance, a narrative, a function. And now, Kenji pondered this. Was he accumulating all this because he genuinely needed it? Or was he simply afraid of who he might become without it? The old woman nodded, affirming, "That's a good start." She rose, preparing to continue her own journey down the hillside. Yet before departing, she turned back to him. "The monastery will impart numerous lessons," she noted, "but you've already grasped the first one that makes all others feasible." "What lesson is that?" he asked, curiosity piqued. "That you can let go of things," she replied succinctly. "That you have the autonomy in each moment to decide what to carry and what to release. This is the bedrock of all peace." She offered a slight bow, and he bowed deeply in response. Then she continued down the footpath, her walking staff tapping a steady rhythm against the stones, soon disappearing into the elongating shadows. Kenji lifted his lightened bundle and entered the monastery gates. A young monk greeted him warmly and guided him to his sleeping area. That night, as Kenji rested on a simple mat, he felt his body ease in a way it hadn't in many years. Tomorrow he would embark on his studies. But for tonight, he simply rested, his only companions being his breath and the soothing rustle of wind drifting through the courtyard of the monastery. This tale unveils a crucial truth regarding our quest for tranquility and peace. We frequently convince ourselves that we must carry everything along with us: our accomplishments, memories, identities, and all the possessions we've amassed over time. Each item presents its own narrative, its justification. We convince ourselves that we may need these things, that they shape our identities, and that relinquishing them would equate to losing an integral part of ourselves. However, These burdens can become so cumbersome that moving forward becomes nearly impossible. We begin to hunch under their weight, obstructing our ability to appreciate the beauty surrounding us, hampering our capacity to breathe deeply, and sabotaging our progress due to exhaustion from hauling everything. The elderly woman grasped a profound truth that Kenji had to learn through lived experience. She carried nothing but her walking stick, not due to lacking possessions, but because she understood the distinction between what aids the journey and what holds it back. She traversed the path with ease, not because the journey was less challenging for her, but because she wasn't hindered by unnecessary burdens. In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching about moving lightly through life. It does not suggest discarding everything or dismissing the past, but instead, it highlights that clinging to everything essentially obstructs our ability to be fully engaged with anything at all. The weight we carry. Kenji was weighed down by an immense load. He couldn't take in the sunny afternoon or listen to the birds chirping or feel the gentle breeze on his skin. His entire existence was engulfed by the strain of carrying so much. Each piece that Kenji let go had once held significance for him. The scrolls embodied his intellectual pursuits. The tools stood for another aspiration. The letters and gifts symbolized bonds and memories. These items were far from worthless. However, the critical question isn't whether an item holds value. It's whether carrying it is beneficial to your journey in this moment on this specific path. As you prepare for bed this evening, reflect on what you might be carrying. Not just tangible items, but the mental and emotional weights that burden your daily life and disrupt your nights. Repeating old debates, even though they took place months or years ago. Questions about decisions you've made, even if they're irrevocable. Expectations imposed by others long ago that you still bear as though they define your identity. Personas you crafted in earlier stages of your life that leave you fatigued from upholding. The road to inner peace doesn't become easier by wishing for a different reality or by gaining strength to shoulder more. It becomes simpler by acknowledging what we no longer need to bear. Sometimes the bravest action we can take is not to grasp tighter, but to loosen our hold. In a city bustling with merchants and scholars, there existed a tea house renowned across the region for both its exquisite tea and the wisdom of its proprietor. The tea house itself was modest and unassuming, featuring paper walls that glowed gently with lantern light in the evenings, and a garden that flourished under careful seasonal attention. Inside, the arrangement was delightfully simple: a low table, cushions for seating, and shelves that held only what was essential for the tea ceremony. Nothing superfluous, nothing squandered, nothing merely for show. Master Takeda presided over the tea house, a man likely in his 60s, with grey hair pulled back simply and hands that moved with the precision born from years of practice. He was recognized not just for his tea, but for his skill in conveying lessons without words. He illustrated truths through simple actions rather than complex explanations. Aspiring students from distant areas came seeking to study with him, though he accepted only a select few. One evening, as rain tapped incessantly against the roof and mist arose from the garden, a young scholar named Hiroshi entered the tea house. He stood at the entrance, shaking off the water from his expensive cloak, clearly disgruntled at having been drenched. Clutched under his arm was a thick collection of scrolls tied with silk cord. These were his writings, his scholarly pursuits, his assemblage of knowledge accrued from years at the Imperial Academy, where he had distinguished himself as one of the most brilliant minds of his cohort. Hiroshi had learned that Master Takeda occasionally took on students to impart teachings about the way of tea and through tea about the essence of life. He hoped to gain knowledge from the master, to enrich his already notable repository of learning. Just another scroll to add to his collection, another credential marking his understanding, another avenue to exemplify his refinement and scholarship. Master Takeda, Hiroshi proclaimed as he stepped inside, bowing swiftly in the formal manner customary to the capital. I have traveled 3 days to meet you. I have absorbed wisdom from the greatest scholars across the land. I can recite all the essential classics from memory. I comprehend philosophy, poetry, history, and the fundamentals of governance. I have authored commentaries my teachers deemed remarkable. I hope you will impart your wisdom to me so I may enrich my understanding of the tea ceremony and integrate this knowledge into my studies. Master Takeda lifted his gaze from the brazier where he was preparing for tea. He scrutinized Hiroshi for a lingering moment, noticing his lavish attire, his haughty stance, and how the young man cherished his scrolls as though they were treasures. He nodded silently and gestured for Hiroshi to take a seat. Hiroshi meticulously arranged his scrolls beside him, ensuring they wouldn't touch the floor or be harmed by any stray drops of water. He adjusted his robes to conform to the proper formal posture, back straight, hands positioned accurately, every detail precise according to the etiquette he had learned. Master Takeda proceeded deliberately with the tea preparation. He ladled water from the pot into the kettle with meticulous care. He wiped each tool with a cloth, his movements steady and fluid. He measured tea leaves from a simple ceramic container, the sound of the scoop against the leaves creating a gentle whisper. The room filled with the delicate aroma of steaming water and tea. Outside, the rain maintained its steady percussion on the roof. Hiroshi grew restless. He had anticipated that the master would begin instructing, elucidating the importance of each movement and sharing the deeper meanings and symbolism. Isn't that what teachers do? Yet, all he received was silence and the humble act of preparing tea. At last, Master Takeda lifted the teapot. Steam curled from its spout as he commenced pouring tea into Hiroshi's cup, a simple ceramic vessel devoid of adornment. The tea cascaded in a consistent stream, the color golden in the lamplight. The cup filled rapidly, the liquid ascending toward the brim. Yet, Master Takeda continued to pour. The tea reached the edge of the cup. Still, the master's hand remained steady, the flow of tea unwavering. The liquid began to spill over, drenching the table in a dark pool that crept dangerously toward Hiroshi's meticulously arranged scrolls. "Master, stop!" Hiroshi exclaimed, breaking his formal stance to leap up and rescue his precious scrolls from the encroaching tea. "The cup is full. It can't hold any more. You're making a mess." Master Takeda finally set down the teapot. The only sounds were the rain pattering on the roof and the droplets of tea landing on the floor from the table's edge. He remained silent, allowing the weight of the moment to settle in. The value of an empty cup. Master Tanaka gazed at Hiroshi with serene, patient eyes. "Consider this cup," the master said gently, his voice a soft murmur. "You are filled with your own thoughts, opinions, and certainties. How can I present anything new to you when there's no space to welcome it? Hiroshi stood still, clutching his scrolls tightly to his chest. Tea trickled slowly from the table to the floor, each drop marking a moment of stillness. His mind swirled with responses and counterarguments, eager to show that he wasn't overfilled, that there was still room to learn. Yet, every answer he constructed only seemed to reinforce the master's assertion. "But master," he managed to say, his voice now smaller and less confident, "I've devoted so much effort to learning all of this, years of study, countless hours. Surely, my knowledge has worth. It must mean something." "The significance of a cup," Master Tanaka replied, methodically wiping up the spilled tea with deliberate motions, "does not lie in being full. The true value of a cup is found in its emptiness, in its ability to receive. A full cup cannot serve its purpose. You may admire it as an object, but it cannot fulfill its role." He wrung out the cloth, the tea-stained water pouring into a bowl. "You've saturated yourself entirely with what you already know," the master continued, "leaving no room for what remains unknown. For every question I might ask, you have an answer. For every lesson I could impart, you think you already grasp. Or so you assume." Hiroshi glanced down at his scrolls, at the silk ribbon binding them, at his meticulously gathered knowledge. For the first time in years, he perceived these scrolls not as accomplishments but as barriers he had constructed around himself, walls that barred anything that could challenge or alter his preconceived notions. "How do I empty the cup?" he inquired softly. Master Tanaka smiled, and there was something in that smile that suggested the master had anticipated this very question. "You begin," the master replied, "by admitting that it is full. This acknowledgement itself opens the first small crack, the initial gap in the wall." He prepared a fresh cup of tea with great care, filling it just before the rim, leaving the tiniest space at the top. "Stay with me for 1 week," Master Tanaka offered, presenting the cup to Hiroshi. "But leave your scrolls at the door. Each day, we will practice one thing, not learning, but unlearning." Hiroshi hesitated. Those scrolls represented years of his life, years of identity, where he believed his worth came from his knowledge. Setting them aside felt akin to setting aside himself. Yet, he considered the spilled tea, the waste, and how his fullness had hindered him from embracing what was being offered. Gradually, he approached the entrance and gently placed his bundle on a shelf. They appeared smaller somehow, less formidable than when he was carrying them. Upon returning and taking a seat, something had shifted. He was no longer seated with perfect posture, rigid like a scholar compelled to validate his worth through knowledge. Instead, he found himself growing uncomfortable and open in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Master Tanaka handed him the fresh cup of tea. "Drink," he instructed simply. Hiroshi lifted the cup to his lips. The tea was perfectly warm, at a temperature ideal for savoring every delicate note. It carried a balance of bitterness and sweetness, complexity revealing itself gradually. He had enjoyed tea hundreds of times before, expensive ones, rare blends, those crafted by renowned masters. Yet, somehow, this unpretentious cup tasted as if it were the very first tea he had ever encountered. as though he was rediscovering tea anew. "What do you perceive?" Master Tanaka asked him. Hiroshi felt a pressure to provide an impressive reply. He wanted to showcase his refined palate, his grasp of tea varieties and cultivation methods, his awareness of water temperature and steeping times. All the knowledge he had accumulated about tea surged forward, eager to fill the air with familiar certainties. But something within him held back. He realized that if he inundated this moment with everything he already understood, he would miss the essence of what was truly present. "I notice," he articulated slowly, the words feeling foreign yet refreshing, "that I don't know what to say." Master Tanaka nodded. "Excellent. That is our starting point." For 7 days, Hiroshi remained at the tea house. Each morning, Master Tanaka prepared tea while Hiroshi practiced the art of emptying his cup, both literally and symbolically. On the first day, he found it agonizing. His mind relentlessly sought to fill every void with knowledge, each silence with commentary, and every experience with explanation. By the second day, he began to recognize the gaps between his thoughts, fleeting moments when his mind wasn't racing to categorize everything. On the third day, he acknowledged how tiring it had been perpetually knowing, constantly having answers, and always feeling the need to display his understanding. By the fifth day, he could sit with Master Tanaka in complete silence for an hour, simply enjoying tea and being present, a fullness surpassing any dialogue he had ever engaged in. On the final morning, as Hiroshi prepared to depart, he moved to the shelf by the door where his scrolls awaited him. He stood in contemplation for a considerable time. "You can leave them here if you desire," Master Tanaka said softly from behind him. "They will be protected." Hiroshi caressed the silk cord binding the scrolls. "I think," he replied thoughtfully, "I will take them, but I will carry them differently now." He lifted the bundle, and surprisingly, it felt lighter than before, even though nothing had changed. He bowed deeply to Master Tanaka, who returned the gesture. "Come back," the master said, "when you have sipped all the tea from this cup." He handed Hiroshi an empty cup. A smile spread across Hiroshi's face, understanding dawning within him. He took the empty cup, tucked it carefully into his robes, and stepped out into the fresh morning air. As he strolled away, he felt as if he were embarking on an entirely new journey, the journey of the open mind. As he proceeded toward the capital, an indescribable sensation washed over him. He felt lighter, yes, but also enriched in a new way, full of space, overflowing with potential, teeming with a rich uncertainty rather than fear. The scrolls still rested beneath his arm, yet they no longer defined him. They had transformed into mere scrolls, just paper, ink, and words that merely scratched the surface of a world infinitely more expansive than the confines of language. This lesson about the overflowing cup resonates deeply with our own experiences, often without us noticing. We fill our minds with opinions, fixed ideas, and conclusions we believe we fully understand. We gather knowledge, concepts, convictions, and judgments until our minds resemble Hiroshi's cup, brimming to the point where nothing new can penetrate. In this fullness, we unintentionally shut ourselves off, not maliciously, simply because there is no room left. When someone offers a fresh viewpoint, we already possess our answer. When life presents an experience that defies our understanding, we attempt to squeeze it into our familiar categories. When wisdom is offered, we are preoccupied with showcasing our existing knowledge to embrace what we have yet to learn. This concept is referred to as the beginner's mind in Zen Buddhism. It embodies a mindset that doesn't assume to know everything. It's the ability to revisit the familiar and behold it anew, maintaining space to absorb new insights. This is considered among the most precious qualities to cultivate, yet also one of the most challenging, as it demands that we relinquish what we often deem valuable, our knowledge. Hiroshi's scrolls weren't unworthy or meaningless. His knowledge held legitimate worth. He had toiled diligently for it, and it represented a true comprehension. However, it was his fixation on that knowledge, his need to embody the role of the informed, and his unwavering belief that he had grasped all the vital truths, which served as barriers. The issue was not the knowledge itself, but rather how he clung to it. Master Tanaka, in allowing the tea to spill over, illustrated to Hiroshi the consequence of approaching life with a full cup. We squander the gifts offered to us. We risk damaging what we cherish, akin to Hiroshi nearly ruining his precious scrolls. We overlook the very experiences we sought, simply because we were too preoccupied with our egos to embrace them. The practice of emptying the cup does not imply becoming oblivious or feigning ignorance about what we know. It requires us to hold our knowledge lightly, to maintain openness for what continues to elude us, and to remain receptive to the possibility of being mistaken or incomplete in our understanding. It is vital to recognize that every answer we cling to confines certain questions, and there are times when those questions wield more significance than the responses. Master Tanaka's ultimate gift to Hiroshi was an empty cup, not one overflowing with knowledge, nor additional teachings to amass, but the essence of emptiness itself. For emptiness is not mere nothingness. It embodies potential, possibility, and capacity for what wishes to enter. The empty cup is prepared. The full cup has nowhere to go. The rain that fell on the tea house that fateful evening has since evaporated. The spilled tea that stained the table has been cleaned away. Yet the lesson remains straightforward, clear, and accessible to anyone willing to momentarily lay aside their scrolls. When you are full, receiving becomes impossible. When you allow yourself to empty, you forge space for what you genuinely require. Deep within mountains where venerable monasteries thrive amidst clusters of bamboo and cedar, a temple gained renown for its profound teachings. Monks traveled from far regions to learn there, and those who completed their training were deemed ready to impart knowledge to others. Master Daishin had devoted 30 years to studying at this temple. He had mastered every text and engaged in meditation for countless hours. He had performed every task from the humblest kitchen duties to conducting ceremonies. His understanding was so profound that fellow monks approached him with their inquiries, and his responses were reliably insightful and supportive. Upon the peaceful passing of the old abbot in his sleep, it was universally acknowledged who should assume his role. Master Daishin was the clear choice, having rightfully earned the position through decades of diligent practice. Consensus affirmed he was prepared. On the morning of his formal induction as the new abbot, Master Daishin rose before dawn, as was his custom. He performed his morning rituals, splashed cold water on his face, and donned the ceremonial robes denoting his new title. These robes were elegantly crafted from heavy silk, ancient, and meticulously maintained, previously worn by every abbot that had preceded him. As he strolled through the monastery grounds toward the main hall where the ceremony was set to unfold, something peculiar occurred. He halted in the courtyard, gazing around as if seeing everything for the first time. Other monks were already assembling, positioning themselves in orderly lines, preparing for the ceremony. His assistant, a young monk named Kenzo, approached with a look of concern. "Master Daishin, all preparations are complete. The monks are gathered. We should commence." Daishin nodded slowly but did not advance toward the hall. Instead, he turned in a measured circle, his gaze scanning the courtyard, the buildings, the trees, as if he were attempting to imprint them in his memory or perhaps jog a forgotten recollection. "Master," Kenzo pressed again, more insistently, "is something amiss?" "I can't quite say," Daishin replied quietly. "Something feels different." Naturally, it feels different today. It is a momentous occasion. You are becoming abbot. Yet, this was not the essence of what Daishin meant. He walked toward the meditation hall but halted outside the main entrance, placing his hand against the wooden frame, feeling the textures beneath his palm. He had traversed this doorway thousands of times. Why did it suddenly feel foreign? Inside the hall, he was slated to take his place at the front, occupying the designated seat of the abbot. However, upon entering and viewing the raised platform, the formal cushion, and the layout he had observed daily for 30 years, he paused. The abbot's awakening. What is this place? Kino questioned. "What do you mean, Master?" "That's the abbot's chair. It belongs to you now." "Is it?" Dessen's tone showed genuine bewilderment. The murmurs among the other monks were beginning to spread. This was not how the event was expected to unfold. Master Daishin was supposed to exude confidence and authority, fully ready to embrace his position. Instead, he appeared bewildered, lost in thought, almost childlike in his hesitance. The head administrative monk, Genzo, stepped forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "Master Daishin, are you feeling unwell? Should we call off the ceremony?" Daishin fixed his gaze on Genzo. There was something in his eyes that caused Genzo to hesitate. It wasn't confusion exactly, but an unsettling kind of clarity. "I apologize," Daishin admitted. "It seems I've lost track of where I am." "You're in the temple," Genzo stated cautiously. "The temple where you've resided for 3 decades. This temple, where you're about to assume the role of abbot." 3 decades. Dessen echoed. "Have I really been here that long?" The whispers intensified, glances of concern flashing among the monks. Had Master Daishin succumbed to the pressure of his impending responsibilities? Had something transpired overnight? Yet Daishin did not seem troubled. He was surveying everything with a newfound intensity, as if he was encountering it all anew. He meandered around the meditation hall, tracing the walls with his fingers, gazing up at the beams of the ceiling, pausing to examine the altar as if uncovering it for the first time. "These walls," he murmured, "when were they erected?" 2 centuries ago," Master Kenzo replied, and added, "You are well aware, having guided visitors through our temple's history." "Am I?" Daishin said, touching the aged wood. "They feel ancient yet also fresh. Does that even make sense?" It made no sense to anyone present. The ceremony was supposed to have commenced by now. Dignitaries from other temples had journeyed for days to participate. But Master Daishin seemed to have not only forgotten the ceremony but also his own identity. Finally, the oldest monk there, a venerable teacher named Hakuin, who had known Daishin for 2 decades, stepped forward. "Daishin," he addressed him, opting for the personal name rather than the formality of the title. "What is transpiring with you?" Daishin turned his gaze upon him, and there was something radiant in his demeanor. "This morning, I woke up," he explained, "and everything feels new. The water on my skin was unlike any I've experienced before. These robes feel unfamiliar. This temple, these edifices, even my hands, when I look at them, all seems to be a first encounter." "But you're not encountering it anew," Hakuin replied gently. "You've been part of this for many years." "Have I?" Daishin said, "I can't recall yesterday. I know on some level there was a yesterday, that I've built a history here over many years, but it seems distant, more like a story I learned rather than one I've lived." He lowered himself onto the floor, not on the abbot's cushion, but on the hard wooden floor as a visitor might. "I don't recall who I am meant to be," he confessed. "All I know is who I truly am in this very moment. And in this moment, I'm someone who is unfamiliar with this place." The monks stood enveloped in silent uncertainty. This was unheard of. There was no clear course of action. Hakuin sat down next to Daishin on the floor. "What do you observe as you survey this hall?" Daishin took in his surroundings leisurely. "I see wood and light. I see robed figures standing remarkably still, observing us. I see dust dancing in the morning sunlight streaming through those windows. I notice shadows gathering in the corners. I see my breath forming a tiny cloud in the chill of the air. And when you contemplate yourself, when you think about who you are..." "I'm not certain," Daishin simply replied. "I feel aware. I feel present. I find myself curious about everything around me, but I don't feel like a specific person. No history, no identity, no narrative about who I've been or who I should become. Just this moment, just this awareness, this peculiar sensation that everything is entirely new." Hakuin remained silent for a significant while. Then, unexpectedly, he began to chuckle, a deep, sincere laugh that resonated throughout the hall. The other monks exchanged astonished glances. What could be humorous about their abbot's apparent loss of sanity on the very morning of his ascendance? But Hakuin rose and bowed deeply before Daishin. "Please excuse my laughter," he said. "I wasn't aware we were in the presence of such deep insight." "What do you mean?" Kenzo queried. "He hasn't lost his sanity," Hakuin clarified. "He has uncovered it. Or more precisely, he has shed everything that concealed it. The weight of identity, the burden of history, the understanding of who he is and how things function, all of it has been stripped away. He's experiencing what Zen refers to as beginner's mind, but in a more profound manner than most of us ever encounter. Turning to Daishin, Hakuin asked, "Do you remember the teachings, the sutras you have studied, the meditation practices?" Daishin reflected on this. "I recall that there were studies. I remember words and concepts, yet they seem hollow now, just sounds that were uttered. The significance I once attached to them is now a foggy memory." "Excellent," Hakuin exclaimed. He addressed the congregation of monks. "What we are witnessing is something extraordinary. Master Daishin has arrived at a state of complete presence. The past is a mere abstract idea for him, not a burden to bear. He holds no attachment to who he was or who he thinks he must be. He is merely here now, encountering everything with fresh eyes." One of the younger monks, voice quivering with trepidation, interjected, "But Master, how can he serve as abbot if he has no memories? How can he guide us if he has forgotten all the teachings?" "Observe closely," Hakuin replied. He turned back to Daishin and asked, "What is Zen?" Daishin met his gaze with those clear, present eyes. "I don't know," he responded. "What does this word Zen mean?" "It is what you've been studying for 30 years. Is it?" Daishin smiled slightly. "That seems like an exceedingly long time to study a word that I don't remember." The essence of beginner's mind. Exposition. Following him was Master Kenji, a dynamic man in his early 40s, whose presence exuded energy. He wore colorful garments that reflected his vibrant character, and as he stepped in, he radiated enthusiasm. Governor Watanabe welcomed both masters, eager to engage them in conversation that would unlock their wisdom. As they sat down in the garden's tranquility, Watanabe made his request clear. "Masters, I wish to grasp the essence of Zen and uncover the mysteries that lie within. Please guide me on this journey." Master Kuji, speaking gently, replied, "True understanding arises from a place unclouded by preconceptions. Take a moment to breathe deeply and become aware of this present moment." Master Kenji nodded in agreement, adding, "The knowledge you seek is not found in books or grand philosophies, but in direct experience. You must approach your quest with an open heart." Watanabe felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. What if my heart is burdened by doubts about what lies ahead? Kuja smiled knowingly. Doubt is a part of the journey. Embrace it. Let it guide you instead of holding you back. Kenji interjected, "And remember, each day is a new beginning. Let go of the weight of past experiences. They shape who you are but do not define your essence." The governor pondered their words, his mind swirling with the implications. As days went on, he spent time with both teachers, engaging in daily dialogue and meditation. He learned to step outside of his established thoughts and attachments. His once rigid perceptions began to soften. One day, during a session with Master Kuji, Watanabe asked, "How can I remain present amidst the chaos of my duties and the expectations placed upon me?" Kuji responded with warmth, "You must continually breathe, grounding yourself in the now. The moment you allow concern for the future or regret for the past to dominate, you detach from this precious instant." Inspired, Watanabe practiced diligently. He discovered beauty in simplicity, the rustle of leaves, the freshness of air, and the joyous laughter of children playing. With every session, he felt the burdens lifting, guiding him toward a newfound clarity. However, the path was not devoid of challenges. Old habits clung fiercely, whispering doubts and fears. During a difficult week, he approached Master Kenji, seeking reassurance. "Master, I fear I am failing. The weight of my responsibilities often feels overwhelming." Kenji regarded him with compassion. "Acknowledging your struggles is crucial. Remember, even in the depths of difficulty, the seed of opportunity lies waiting. Embrace each moment and watch how it unfolds." Over time, Watanabe began to perceive his daily tasks not as burdens but as opportunities for growth and learning. He engaged with his duties, viewing each decision as a chance to be mindful, rather than a chore to be completed. His transformation took hold, affecting not just his own life but also those around him. The governor's insights spread throughout the city. Patrons of the temples noted changes in their interactions with him. His fresh perspective encouraged others to look at their own lives through a clearer lens. As seasons changed and days passed, Watanabe reflected on how far he had come. One sunny afternoon, he gathered a group of fellow scholars and shared his experiences. "Masters Kuji and Kenji have taught me invaluable lessons about the importance of a beginner's mind. Let us, too, approach our studies and encounters with renewed vigor and openness." The listeners were captivated, their curiosity piqued. Discussions blossomed as ideas and insights flowed freely, transforming the atmosphere into one of exploration and discovery. In years to come, Governor Watanabe would frequently express gratitude for the teachings he received. Whenever someone inquired about his path into Zen, he would simply smile and state, "I am still discovering, for every day is ripe with possibilities." And thus, this tale embodies the teachings of beginner's mind, illustrating the profound impact of approaching life without the burdens of preconceived notions or limiting beliefs. By nurturing an openness to the world and a willingness to embrace each moment as it comes, we can discover a depth of understanding and connection that enriches our journey through life. Governor Watanabe, Master Kuja began, his tone gentle and full of respect. "It's a true privilege to be with you. Your esteemed reputation for fair leadership has resonated across the land. I am confident that you possess the intuition and kindness necessary to appreciate the essence of Zen. Guiding you on this journey would be an immense honor for me." A sense of satisfaction washed over the governor. This was precisely the type of mentor he yearned to find, someone who recognized his strengths, who would nurture his capabilities, and who acknowledged his capacity for understanding. They settled into the serene garden, where Master Kuja posed insightful inquiries about the governor's life, duties, and aspirations for spiritual growth. The master listened intently, nodding in recognition, occasionally providing gentle insights that felt encouraging and affirming. "I sense," Master Kuja said after their dialogue, "that your quest for knowledge is sincere. With your inherent wisdom and my guidance, I have no doubt you will advance remarkably. The path to Zen will unfold for you as a flower reveals itself to the sun." Governor Watanabe felt a surge of warmth and contentment. Yes, This was indeed the right mentor, a person who truly understood him, who would meet him on his level, making the journey both enjoyable and fulfilling. Then Master Ryokan entered. Older than Master Kuji, possibly around 65, he bore a weathered visage and eyes that seemed to pierce deeper than the surface of those he encountered. He bowed less deeply at the entrance. His demeanor was straightforward, even brusque. The governor prepared for the same kind of congenial exchange he'd shared with Master Kuji. "Governor Watanabe," Master Ryokan stated, taking a seat without waiting for his invitation. "I understand you wish to delve into Zen. Why is that?" The abruptness surprised Watanabe. "I seek knowledge," he replied, regaining his composure. "I desire to comprehend the essence of mind and existence. I want peace beneath the burdens of my role." Master Ryokan scrutinized him for an extended moment before grunting. "Is it that you wish to feel exceptional? Do you aim to add Zen practitioner to your list of successes?" The governor stiffened. "That's not entirely fair. You don't actually know me, do you?" Master Ryokan's tone was not cruel, but it lacked warmth. "You hold a position of authority. You're used to admirers and sycophants. You seem to perceive Zen as another skill to conquer, a means to assert your superiority." "That's not true," Watanabe asserted. Yet, as he spoke, uncertainty began to creep in. Was he truly viewing Zen merely as another accomplishment? "You carry yourself," Master Ryokan continued, "as someone who has never been genuinely tested. Everyone praises your wisdom, your ability, your worthiness, and you've begun to accept it as truth." The governor felt heat rise to his cheeks. No one had ever spoken to him in such a manner, not even his closest allies or family. Who did this blunt old man think he was to judge him so sternly? "I believe this meeting has concluded," Watanabe said coldly. "Thank you for your time, but I don't believe this would be a productive relationship." Master Ryokan shrugged. "As you wish. You'll choose the other one, I assume. The one who tells you exactly what you want to hear." He began to leave, but something in his words caused Watanabe to hesitate. "What do you mean?" "The other master," Ryokan stated, "is gentle and supportive. He'll make you feel good about who you are. You'll find joy in studying with him, exchanging light-hearted banter in gardens such as these. You'll immerse yourself in lovely texts and explore meaningful ideas. And in 10 years, you'll be precisely where you are today, armed with more knowledge about Zen but lacking genuine insight. And what do you present that's different?" Master Ryokan answered bluntly. "Nothing you would enjoy, I assure you. I would reveal to you when you're deceiving yourself. I would highlight every moment where you're performing spirituality instead of engaging in the practice. I would keep you in discomfort, for comfort is your cage." The governor stood up, rage flaring in his chest. "You're pompous and disrespectful. Who would choose to study under someone with such an attitude?" "They wouldn't," Ryokan conceded. "Most people prefer mentors who make them feel good. That's precisely why so few ever genuinely evolve. They merely become more adept at self-deception." He moved toward the exit but paused. "You raised an intriguing question just now. You queried what I could offer. not what would please you, but what I could provide. That's the first moment of honesty you've expressed since my arrival." After Master Ryokan departed, Governor Watanabe sat in solitude within his garden, his thoughts whirling. He replayed their conversation repeatedly, feeling the sharpness of the master's words, crafting better arguments he could have made. But beneath the anger and wounded pride, something else began to awaken, a small voice posing disquieting inquiries. Was Ryokan correct? Had he been perceiving Zen merely as another credential? Was he after wisdom, or was it merely the desire to be regarded as wise? That evening, he summoned his advisor, an elderly man who had loyally served his family for decades and one of the few individuals willing to speak candidly with him. Master Kuji had exhibited kindness and respect. Watanabe spoke. Master Ryokan was crude and insulting. Clearly, I should follow the path of Master Kuji, shouldn't I? The advisor paused for a moment, then replied, "May I speak candidly, my lord?" "Always. You have been surrounded by individuals who defer to your authority your entire life. Your father held the governorship before you. You have desired for nothing. While you are intelligent and capable, you've seldom faced true challenges or received opposition. When you make errors, people generally refrain from telling you." The governor felt an urge to defend himself but gestured for him to continue. "The question at hand is not which teacher is more pleasant," the advisor explained. "The issue is which mentor will provide you with the truths you must understand instead of simply catering to what you wish to hear. Which one will illuminate your blind spots rather than just affirming your existing beliefs about yourself?" Wotton, navigating truths amidst the sands. A.B. lingered on these thoughts for quite some time. As dusk settled in and lanterns illuminated the garden, he found his mind drifting back to the gaze of Master Ryo. It hadn't conveyed cruelty, rather, it exhibited clarity. It felt as if someone was observing him without the usual veils of hierarchy or courtesy, simply recognizing what truly existed. The following morning, he reached out to Master Ryoan. This wasn't an invite for lessons, rather a straightforward inquiry. "If I chose to study with you, what would my inaugural lesson entail?" The response arrived swiftly, within the hour. "Stop seeking answers you already possess." Governor Watanabe couldn't help but chuckle to himself. He had indeed been aware all along of the teacher he ought to pursue. In truth, he had merely wished for someone to grant him permission to take the easier route. Without delay, he sent another message. "I wish to learn from you, but I must ask, why do you come across as so stern? Why can't the truth be presented gently?" This time, Master Ryoan's reply was more expansive. "I do not embody harshness. I embody clarity. You are unaccustomed to clarity because you have been surrounded by those who regulate your emotions. When someone ceases to manage those feelings and simply lays out the truth, it may seem harsh. Yet, that's not harshness. It's a form of respect. I respect you enough to be truthful." Later that afternoon, Governor Watanabe visited Master Kuji. He expressed heartfelt gratitude for his compassion and shared his decision to pursue studies under Master Ryoan's guidance instead. Master Kuja's face illuminated with understanding. "I comprehend. He is indeed a commendable mentor, perhaps better suited for your needs. I hope you discover what you are searching for." They exchanged sincere bows, and as the governor exited, he felt reassured in his decision, even though it was the more challenging path. His inaugural lesson with Master Ryokan was set for the next week. Upon his arrival at the modest chamber where Ryokan resided, he discovered the master deep in meditation. "Take a seat," Ryokan commanded without lifting his eyelids. "What? On Saturday?" They remained enveloped in silence for an hour. Then, Ryokan finally opened his eyes. "Tell me, why have you come?" To Master Zen, Watanabe replied, "Incorrect. Try once more. To seek tranquility. Incorrect. Try yet again. To comprehend my essence. Closer, but still evading the truth." Watanabe sat in frustrated silence. Ultimately, he confessed, "I truly don't know why I'm here now." Master Ryokan responded, "Then we can commence." They would engage in their studies over the next 5 years. The journey was far from easy. Master Ryokan seldom commended him. Frequently, the master would illustrate when Watanabe was merely performing instead of genuinely practicing. At times, when he sought validation over comprehension, when he clung to the notion of appearing wise instead of actually perceiving clearly. Yet gradually, a transformation took place. The governor began to recognize his own patterns, his defenses, and the methods he employed to shield himself from uncomfortable realities. He began to discern the distinction between intellectual knowledge of Zen and genuine insight. His evolution surprised him in numerous ways. Years later, when asked about his mentor, he remarked, "I understood that one cannot uncover truth if one exclusively hears from those who echo what they wish to believe. The most compassionate act anyone can perform is to convey truth, even when it is unsettling." Master Ryokan endowed me with that gift. He valued my authentic growth enough to risk my disapproval. This is true kindness. Even if it may not seem kind in the moment, this teaching on selecting the mentor who poses challenges rather than one who offers comfort reveals something pivotal in any genuine transformation or growth. Naturally, we tend to favor those who uplift our self-esteem, who affirm our pre-existing beliefs, who convince us that we are already on the correct trajectory. It's a quintessentially human desire. However, comfort and growth frequently navigate divergent paths. A teacher who perpetually aligns with us, who consistently sees our finest qualities, who abstains from challenging our beliefs or highlighting our blind spots, while they may cultivate feelings of happiness, will not assist us in uncovering the unseen aspects of ourselves. It's important to recognize that Master Ryo was not harsh for the sake of it. His unfiltered honesty stemmed from respect, from recognizing Watanabe as someone equipped to confront truth rather than someone requiring protection from it. Strangely, his directness could be seen as more respectful than Master Kuja's gentleness, as it presumed that Watanabe possessed the resilience to face himself with honesty. In the realm of Zen Buddhism, this notion is often referred to as fierce compassion. It embodies the readiness to jeopardize someone's comfort, even their momentary displeasure, for the sake of their profound well-being. It's one thing to be kind. It's an entirely different matter to reveal truth when that truth is uncomfortable. The road to serenity isn't always a soft one. At times, We must confront uncomfortable realities about ourselves, our habits, and our blind spots. We have to possess the courage to be incorrect, to welcome challenges, and to allow our self-image to be disrupted. Master Rioan presented Governor Watanabe with something far beyond agreeable discussions about Zen. He granted him the ability to perceive himself with clarity, stripped of the usual veils of decorum and deference that typically shielded the governor from unvarnished feedback. That honest vision, though painful, paved the way for authentic transformation. In a vast desert, where the shifting winds perpetually reshape the sands, where dunes morphed from dawn to dusk and landmarks vanished with the night, there existed a community adept at navigating without maps. They were wanderers, tracing ancient paths not inscribed in any earthly form, but retained in memory and handed down through the ages. A trader named Ichiro had journeyed from the coast to engage with these desert dwellers. He was a pragmatic man, accustomed to roads, precise directions, maps, and signposts. The desert unsettled him with its constant flux, its refusal to settle into any defined shape. After concluding his business, Ichiro prepared for his return journey. The chief of the nomads cautioned him about an impending sandstorm, advising him to postpone his departure for a few days until it subsided. However, Ichiro's impatience won over. He had family awaiting his return, trade agreements that demanded attention, a life requiring his focus. The traveler's path. He spoke to the chief, stating, "I followed the sun and the stars here. I can trace my steps back the same way." The chief's expression was one of skepticism, yet he chose not to contest. "May you find your path," he replied, his words sounding more like a query than genuine encouragement. Ichiro began his journey at dawn, riding his camel laden with provisions. The first day was smooth. He tracked the sun, maintained his sense of direction, and made significant headway. The second day was equally favorable. He felt validated in his choice not to delay, dismissing the chief's concerns about an impending storm as mere overcautiousness of an old man. By the third day, shortly after noon, the atmosphere began to shift. Blue skies morphed into shades of yellow, followed by orange hues. The wind stirred, gentle at first, but escalated rapidly. In a matter of moments, Ichiro found himself engulfed in the very sandstorm the chief had forewarned him about. It was unlike anything he had known before. The wind howled tumultuously from every direction, as sand engulfed the air so densely that he could no longer see the head of his camel. He pulled a cloth over his face and commanded his camel to kneel. All he could do now was await clearer skies. The tempest persisted for 2 days. When it finally subsided, and the sky returned to a vibrant blue, Ichiro surveyed the transformed landscape around him. The dunes had shifted. The rocks that had previously guided him were hidden beneath the sand. The traces of his own journey had disappeared, and the sand now possessed a new texture, polished by the relentless winds. He retrieved his mental map, a recollection of landmarks and routes, but nothing aligned. The desert had reconfigured itself while he sheltered from the tempest. Ichiro selected a direction that felt instinctively right and resumed walking. After several hours, uncertainty gripped him. Was this the route he had originally traversed? It appeared somewhat familiar, yet all of the desert had an eerie sense of both familiarity and strangeness. He pressed on for another day, his water dwindling and his confidence waning. At night, he attempted to orient himself using the stars, but they offered only directional guidance, lacking clarity on his exact location. North was a meaningless measurement absent definitive landmarks. On the second evening of his aimless wandering, Ichiro spotted a small flicker of fire in the distance. Relief washed over him. He urged his fatigued camel forward. As he drew nearer, he recognized it was a desert nomad, an elderly man sitting quietly by his fire, his camel resting beside him. The man looked up, seemingly not surprised, as though he had anticipated Ichiro's arrival. "You are adrift," he stated, not as a question but as a fact. "Yes." Ichiro confessed. "The storm altered everything. I can't retrace my steps." The nomad nodded, motioning for Ichiro to join him by the fire. He offered a cup of water and dried dates, which Ichiro gratefully accepted. "Which path should I follow?" Ichiro inquired. "What direction leads me to the coast?" The elderly man contemplated this, asking, "Which way do you believe you ought to go?" Ichiro replied in frustration, "If I knew that, I wouldn't be lost." "Are you truly lost, or are you just present here?" Ichiro felt a surge of frustration. These desert-dwelling people often conveyed answers that felt evasive. "I need to return home. My family is awaiting my return. I have commitments. I have to know which way to go." The nomad stirred the flames. The desert does not operate on fixed paths. It is ever-evolving. The route you took has vanished. Your mental map is outdated. So, how does one navigate through it? How do you ascertain your direction? "We cannot," the old man replied with simplicity. "We traverse and observe. We tune into the characteristics of the wind, the textures of the sand, and the subtle shifts in the terrain. We do not adhere to paths, we discover them." "That isn't helpful," Ichiro retorted. "I require precise instructions." The nomad studied him with calm understanding. "You expect me to construct a map for a desert that is fluid. You want me to direct you to a perceived destination based on an assumed position. Yet, what occurs if you are not where you believe you are?" "What do you mean?" Ichiro asked. "Where are you now?" Ichiro examined his surroundings. "I'm lost in the desert, somewhere between your camp and the coast." "No," the nomad replied. "You are precisely here, beside this fire, in this moment. This is where you exist." "But that is not my desired location." "Ah," the nomad said, a gentle smile forming. "Then you are not lost in the desert. Rather, you are caught in the gap between your current reality and your aspirations." Ichiro sat silently, his frustration palpable. This dialogue felt circular, akin to the desert itself. The nomad poured him another drink. "Tell me," he began, "when you were en route to my camp, did you feel lost then?" "No," Ichiro answered. "I was confident of my direction." "Were you? Or did you merely traverse the desert day by day, attuned to the sun and the landscape until you reached your destination?" He pondered this question. Indeed, he hadn't followed a precise route. He had simply journeyed, making choices based on what he perceived each day, trusting that progress in a general direction would eventually lead him home. "So, how does now differ?" the old man pressed. "Because then I was headed somewhere concrete. Right now, I lack clarity on my whereabouts or the path I should choose." "You are right here," the nomad reiterated, "and the coast exists in a direction. When the sun rises tomorrow, begin walking toward where it sets. Observe the land. Notice the texture of the sand. Feel the wind caressing you. The desert will guide you if you cease trying to apply your outdated map to its newly transformed landscape. But what if I walk the wrong way? What if I end up even more lost?" "You cannot be more lost than you presently are," the old man replied. "Lost is merely a narrative you fabricate about not being where you believe you should be. But remember, you are always in a location. Right now, you are here. Tomorrow, you will be elsewhere. This isn't being lost. This is simply navigating through space." They sat in companionable silence. The fire crackled gently. The night was cold and clear. Above, the stars glimmered with such intensity that Ichiro had never beheld anything like it before. "The storm was essential," the nomad finally remarked. "It swept away your old path so you could unearth a new journey." The journey of discovery. Ichiro's experience highlighted a remarkable truth. There isn't a singular prescribed path in life. Rather, it consists of your current location and your next steps. As dawn broke the following day, Ichiro felt a shift within himself, though he couldn't articulate precisely what it was. The wise nomad provided him with additional water and gestured towards the direction of the sunset. "Just walk," he advised. "Be observant. Trust the process." "Thank you," Ichiro replied. "I hope to find my way." "You are already on your way," the nomad reassured him. Ichiro continued his journey for 3 more days, relinquishing the urge to align his surroundings with his memories. He stopped fearing he was adrift. Instead, he moved with intention, attuned to the subtle cues of the environment, following his instincts, and trusting that this movement would lead him somewhere meaningful. On the 4th day, he caught sight of the ocean. His discovery was not the result of following a specific route or map, but rather through a profound presence in each unfolding moment, letting go of preconceived notions of how things should unfold and embracing reality as it presented itself. Upon his return home, his family inquired about his travels. "I became lost in the desert," he revealed. "And in that uncertainty, I discovered something I hadn't realized I was seeking." "What was that?" his wife asked. "I learned that being lost is just another form of existing in a space. That not knowing my location can sometimes represent the most genuine connection with my surroundings." This lesson about the idea of being lost resonates with a universal experience that often goes unconsidered. We traverse our lives guided by maps, plans, and expectations concerning our destination and the route to take. When our reality diverges from these mental maps, we often find ourselves feeling disoriented, anxious, questioning whether things have gone awry. But what if being lost is merely a state of attunement to the present reality instead of a misalignment with our expectations? What if the sensation of being lost stems not from an actual misplacement, but from the distance between our assumptions and what we truly encounter? Ichiro's belief about his route home relied on a desert landscape that had dramatically altered. The storm had transformed everything. His navigational map became obsolete. Yet, at first, he failed to recognize this truth. He tirelessly attempted to reconcile his observations with his recollections, working to fit the unfamiliar terrain within the confines of his outdated understanding. This fixation on the past was what made him feel lost. It was not merely the transformed desert that caused his disorientation, but his insistence that it should still correspond with his memories. The old nomad possessed insights that Ichiro needed to absorb. In a landscape that's perpetually evolving, clinging to certainty serves as a snare. The nomads surveyed their surroundings not through rigid maps, but by maintaining a vigilant focus, interpreting the immediate reality, and relying on their capability to engage with what truly existed rather than projecting their expectations onto it. When the nomad remarked, "You are here," he imparted a profound lesson to Ichiro. It wasn't merely about Ichiro's geographical position on a map, but rather about recognizing that his current experience, the reality he inhabited, was precisely here, right now. Although he might be days away from the coast, that distance existed only conceptually. What was tangibly real at that moment was the campfire, the present experience, and the awareness of his existence beneath a canopy of infinite stars. We expend considerable energy trying to ascertain our position in relation to our perceived benchmarks. Am I on the correct path? Am I making headway? Am I at an appropriate stage in my life, my career, my relationships? These queries are predicated on a belief in a fixed map, a predetermined route, and a destination we are meant to reach. But what if life resembles a desert after a powerful storm, ever shifting, never static, and impossible to navigate using outdated maps? What if the sensation of being lost is simply a reflection of the profound experience of living within a reality that resists conformance with our expectations? The nomads understood this truth. They could not define their journey in absolute terms, but they mastered the art of being fully present wherever they were. They learned to interpret the current moment, feel the breeze, sense the texture of the sand, and move with acute awareness and trust rather than relying on certainty and control. This is the essence of the Zen principle of not knowing. It does not evoke the anxiety of feeling lost. Instead, it offers the liberation of being here, actively engaging with the present as it is, responding instinctively to reality instead of trying to mold it into our predetermined expectations. Within a vibrant town along a key trade route connecting the capital to the coast, resided a celebrated calligrapher known for his exquisite artistry. His workspace was modest, just a simple wooden table positioned near the marketplace, where both travelers and locals paused to admire his craft or commission special pieces. A young monk by the name of Sesshin had been journeying for weeks in search of a teacher. He had heard of an esteemed Zen master residing in this town, someone who could facilitate deeper insight. However, inquiries revealed that no one seemed to know the identity of this master or his whereabouts. One afternoon, disheartened and fatigued, Sozen rested on a stone wall at the marketplace, observing the bustle around him. Vendors hawked their goods, children dashed through the stalls, and the enticing aromas of grilled fish intertwined with the scent of freshly baked bread and the dust of the thoroughfare. His gaze settled upon an elderly man at a calligraphy table, appearing to be roughly 70, with white hair casually tied back, skillfully maneuvering his brush across the paper with deliberate grace. He painted characters on rice paper, each stroke flowing with intention. Intrigued, Sozin watched for a while, finding tranquility in the old man's artistry. Eventually, he rose and approached the table. "Pardon me, Elder," Sozin said, bowing respectfully. "I'm on a quest to find a Zen master who dwells in this town. I've heard tales of his great wisdom, yet no one seems to know where he is. Have you encountered such a person?" The old man continued his work without looking up. He dipped his brush in ink and commenced creating a new character on the pristine paper. "A Zen master," he murmured softly. "What name would you assign to him?" "That's precisely the challenge," Sozin confessed. "I don't know his name. I've merely been told he lives here and is recognized for his profound insights." The old man nodded thoughtfully, still immersed in his task. "The essence of calligraphy. I've resided in this town for quite some time, yet I can't recall encountering anyone who claims to be a Zen master." This realization deepened his sense of disappointment. He had journeyed far, fueled by whispers and hope. Perhaps the master had relocated, or the tales had been embellished. "Are you sure?" he inquired, curiosity evident. The figure seemed to embody wisdom, perhaps known for his teachings or meditation. The elder placed down his brush and raised the paper he had been meticulously working on, adjusting it to catch the warm afternoon glow. The character he had crafted was both graceful and robust, the ink still fresh, shimmering with potential. A brisk gust of wind swept through the marketplace, swirling dust and playing with the edges of the cloth draped over merchant stalls. The wind snatched the delicate paper from the elder's grasp, whisking it away before he could secure it, sending it floating through the air. They both observed as the paper twirled and danced, the once precise ink starting to smear and blur. Eventually, it landed in a nearby puddle beside a vegetable stall, the character dissolving into illegible murkiness. The old man gazed at his ruined work without any sign of distress. Instead, he turned back to his table and prepared a fresh sheet of paper. "That was exquisite work," So remarked. "Aren't you upset that it was lost?" "Was it really lost?" the elder responded nonchalantly. "Or did it merely transform? The ink remains in the world. It just isn't structured the way I intended." So settled onto a small stool next to the calligraphy table, putting aside his quest for the master, feeling a sense of tranquility enveloping him, a feeling of completeness. "Have you been practicing calligraphy for a long time?" So asked. The elder paused, his brush lingering just above the page. "I'm uncertain," he finally answered. "It feels like both a distant past and a fleeting moment." "How can you be unsure? Surely you remember when you began?" So queried. "I recall the sensation of holding a brush, the touch of ink against paper. Yet, when that was, how many years have passed, it's all a blur. Time tends to blend together when you engage in the same act daily." He began to form a new character, his strokes assured but unhurried, each line appearing exactly where it needed to be. "What do people call you?" Sosin inquired. The elder's brush paused mid-stroke, as he regarded Sosin with mild confusion, as though the question caught him off guard. "My name," he echoed. "Yes, what do you go by?" The elder set aside his brush and examined his hands, turning them over as if seeking an answer within. "That's quite intriguing," he mused quietly. "It seems I've forgotten your own name." So couldn't mask his astonishment. How can one forget their own name? "I can't say for certain," the elder replied. He spoke with a calm curiosity rather than distress. "People refer to me in various ways: Old Master, Calligrapher, or simply Elder. However, my true name, what I was called in my youth, lingers in my memory, just out of reach. It's odd how much of our identity resides in a name. When I attempt to recall mine, it feels as if I'm trying to remember the person I was expected to become rather than who I truly am." Sosin observed as the character emerged on the paper. It represented the concept of emptiness or void. The elder painted it with complete focus, each stroke synchronized with his breath, the brush moving as if the character itself were being formed. "Doesn't it trouble you?" Sosin asked, the notion of not knowing his own name. "Should it?" The elder replied and completed the final stroke, then placed down his brush. "I know the art of painting. I understand how to mix ink and prepare paper. I'm aware of the sensation of sitting here while the sun travels across the sky. I recognize the faces of my neighbors who pass by daily. These facts are tangible, yet my name, that's just a sound others use to summon me. Whether I recall it or not doesn't alter who I am in this moment." He gazed at So with serene eyes. "Who are you when no one utters your name? Who are you in the silence before someone addresses you? That's what I predominantly experience now, not a person burdened by history and identity, but simply this consciousness, this existence at this table creating characters." A customer approached, interrupting their dialogue. She requested a blessing to be painted for her newborn grandchild. The elder attentively listened to her ask, nodded, and began to paint. His brush glided over the paper with steady elegance, and the woman observed with awe, clearly recognizing something profound in his artistry. Once she departed, clutching the rolled paper protectively, So remarked, "People hold you in high regard. They seek you out for significant matters. You must have a reputation, a name that resonates with them." "Perhaps," the elder said thoughtfully, "but reputation is akin to a name. It's something others carry, not something I need to grasp." He rinsed his brushes in a small basin of water, watching the ink swirl and dissipate in the clear liquid. "In my youth, I was deeply concerned about my name, my reputation, and whether others thought favorably of my work. I bore all of that like a heavy load until I eventually set it aside. Or maybe it simply faded away, much like these characters will diminish if left under the sun and rain." So sat in reflective silence, absorbing this wisdom. After a moment, he confessed, "I believe I've been pursuing the wrong thing." "What were you in search of?" the elder queried. "A teacher with a name, with a reputation, with credentials proving his ability to teach me. But perhaps the most effective teacher is one who has let all that go. The elder smiled softly. Or maybe you've just encountered an aged calligrapher who has forgotten his identity. Sometimes, things are exactly as they appear, nothing more. As the sun began to set and the marketplace quieted down, so lent a hand to the elder in packing up his tools. They worked side by side in harmonious silence, and so realized he felt a more profound sense of peace than he had experienced throughout his weeks of searching. "May I return tomorrow?" So asked. The brush as he painted a perfect circle, effortlessly fluid and whole. As he lifted the brush from the page, there was a moment of silence that hung in the air before Takamori found his voice. "See, now that is how a circle should look. Your work lacks the completion that was expected." Sato observed the Lord's obvious frustration but remained serene, his expression one of calm understanding. "You see, my Lord," he began, "the circle is indeed finished. What you're perceiving as a lack of closure is merely an invitation for interpretation." Takamori frowned, not grasping the artist's perspective. "An invitation? It is not complete. There lies a gap." Sato took a moment, breathing in deeply as he gathered his thoughts. In art, as in life, not all things need to be whole to possess meaning. The space you call a gap allows room for the viewer to engage, to bring their own feelings, thoughts, and interpretations into the work. A completed circle offers no such opportunity. The wealthy lord crossed his arms, still unconvinced. "But I demanded a finished painting. I'm an honored lord, and I will not accept less than I deserve." Calmly, Sato replied, "Respectfully, my lord, art cannot be confined to the expectations of the marketplace or the desires of its patrons. It exists beyond that, in the realm of emotion, experience, and understanding." Takamori sneered. "What does that mean for me? I require satisfaction for my investment." "Perhaps," Sato suggested gently, "you should consider that your dissatisfaction may stem from the rigidity of your own expectations rather than the painting itself." The Lord paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his brow. He regarded the painter, seeing beneath the calm demeanor a profound comprehension of the human experience. "You believe that I stubbornly cling to my own ideas?" "Indeed," Sato confirmed softly, "our identities, like the circles we create, can work both ways. They can bind us, confine our perception, or they can open us to new possibilities and interpretations." For the first time, Takamori began to reflect on his own life, the confines of naming, status, and wealth that boxed him in. "You suggest I learn from an unfinished circle?" he asked tentatively, curiosity piercing through his irritation. "Consider it an opportunity," Sato answered, "to explore what exists beyond an expectation. Embrace the space where you can grow, reevaluate, and find your own meaning." The Lord sighed, a weary resignation creeping into his posture as he regarded the painting once again. The simple circle before him now carried a weight he had not seen before. "You may be right, Sato. There is a freedom in this perspective." Sato offered a slight nod, acknowledging the Lord's realization. Life often imitates art. When we embrace the gaps, we find more of ourselves. After a moment of silence, Takamore stood, the tension in his shoulders loosened. "I will return to my home and reflect on your lesson. Perhaps I misjudged your artistry, and perhaps I misjudged life itself." With that, the wealthy lord took his leave, leaving Sato at his table, surrounded by simple yet profound creations, reminders that not all things demand completion to hold value. In this world where expectations often dictate outcomes, sometimes it takes an unfinished circle to illuminate the beauty of perspective and the power of acceptance, both in art and in life. The brush of possibility. The brush glided across the paper, a line emerging effortlessly from the center and gracefully curving outward, forging a flawless arc. Just as the line was about to complete the circle, he lifted the brush, leaving another unfinished circle. "You see," Takamore observed, "you did just the same. You halted before finishing." "Did I?" Sato inquired, unfurling yet another sheet of paper and forming another circle. Again, he paused just shy of completion. Then again, and yet again. Each one identical, consistently separated by that tiny gap where the end would have met the start. "Why do you keep stopping?" Takamore pressed. "Why not finish a single circle?" Sato set his brush aside. "When does a circle become whole? When it closes, when the ends connect. And then what?" Takamore frowned, perplexed. "What do you mean by that?" "And then what? Then it's a circle, a complete entity, perfect and whole." Sato nodded slowly. "A complete entity, perfect and whole. Nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. Is that what you desire?" "That is what a circle is," Takamore replied, though his confidence began to falter. "Is it?" Sato gestured toward the window, where a cart rolled along the road outside. "Observe that wheel. Is it complete?" "Of course it is. It's a circle and yet it continually spins. If it were entirely complete, if it truly finished, would it still move?" Takamore opened his mouth to counter, then hesitated. He observed the wheel in its constant rotation, its never-ending motion. Sato picked up one of his partial circles. "This line," he said, tracing his finger along the painted arc, "encapsulates the entire journey of the brush, its beginning, its middle, and its end. When I lift the brush here, just before the completion, there remains potential. The circle could still evolve. It hasn't finished its transformation yet." "That doesn't resonate," Takamore said, but his voice was softer now, less assured. "Consider the gap," Sato said, holding the painting up to the light. "What do you notice there?" "Nothing. Empty space." "Precisely. Is that nothing part of the circle or distinct from it?" Takamore examined the gap closely. It was small, just a finger's breadth of white paper between where the line concluded and where it began. But now that he scrutinized it, he couldn't quite distinguish the gap from the rest of the circle. The gap contributed to the definition of the circle just as much as the line itself did. Without that space, there would be no beginning, no end, and no journey of the brush. "As soon as I close this circle," Sato continued, "it dies. It becomes a finished thing, static and unchanging. But while this gap lingers, the circle remains alive, in motion, still evolving. The incompleteness isn't a fault, it's what sustains its vigor. He laid out several of his unfinished circles on the table. In Zen, we say that the pauses between words are where truth resides. The silence between notes is where music unfolds. The emptiness in a bowl gives it functionality. If I were to close this circle, I would shut down the possibility. The gap serves as an invitation, an opening, a space for you to enter and either complete it or leave it unfinished and allow it to remain in motion. Takamori sat quietly, studying the paintings. Gradually, he felt a shift in his understanding. The gap, which had once seemed a mistake, a symbol of incompleteness, began to appear differently. It evolved into the most significant aspect of the painting: the breath, the pause, the opportunity for something to still occur. "How long have you been creating circles this way?" he quietly asked. 30 years, Sato replied. "At first, I attempted to paint perfect circles that were entirely closed. I studied techniques, practiced tirelessly, and produced many flawless circles. What shifted? One day, my brush slipped. I was on the verge of completing a circle, and at the last moment, my hand quivered. The line didn't quite connect. I regarded this error and observed something I had never perceived in all my perfect circles. I recognized life, motion, potential. From that moment forward, I've never closed a circle." He prepped fresh ink. Every complete object is already lifeless. Every finished thought is already outdated. Every closed circle is a tomb. But this... He painted another arc, lifting his brush just before finishing, is still alive. Takamori picked up the painting Sato had originally given him. He examined it with a new perspective. The gap that once annoyed him now appeared as the painting's breath, a space for his own experience to enter and engage. "I see it now," he said. "Or at least, I'm starting to. May I keep this painting?" "It has always belonged to you," Sato replied. "Perhaps now you can grasp what you're holding." Takamori took the painting home and hung it in his private study, away from the main gallery with his other significant works. Each day, he would sit before it, contemplating that small gap, the space where the circle almost but didn't quite complete itself. And in that gap, he discovered something that his other flawless finished paintings could never provide: an opening, a breath, a place for his own awareness to rest. Years later, guests visiting his home would comment on the painting. "It's not complete," they would say, pointing at the gap. And Takamori would smile. "Exactly." This lesson on the incomplete circle uncovers something profound about perfection and completion. We spend our lives striving to finish tasks, complete our projects, wrap everything up neatly, and reach a point where we can finally declare it done. We believe that completing something is the aim, that perfection implies nothing is left unfinished. But Sato perceived a different truth. The instant something is finished, it ceases to move. It becomes static, restricting potential. The incomplete circle remains open, alive, in motion. The gap is not a flaw, but rather life-giving breath. In Zen Buddhism, There exists a concept called mu, which signifies emptiness, not as absence, but as potential. The gap in Sardo's circles embodies this type of emptiness. It's not about what's missing, it's about creating space for something, space for the observer to engage, space for the circle to continue its journey. The open spaces of awareness, for life to flow through. Observe how Takamore's reaction transformed when he ceased to view the gap as an error. The same artwork that had once frustrated him evolved into something he cherished, not in spite of its unfinished state, but because of it. His viewpoint shifted. The floor emerged as the highlight. The gap became a gift. What aspects of your life are you deeming incomplete or flawed that might actually be precisely as they should be? Which gaps are you attempting to close that might be more beneficial if left open? What sense of incompleteness are you resisting that could be encouraging you to perceive things differently? The brush that lifts before completing a circle trusts that the gap has its own fullness. The circle isn't complete merely when it closes, but when the artist recognizes it has conveyed what it intended. Sometimes that message is simply to stay open. Keep breathing. Remain in motion. Don't seal yourself off too early. As you settle in tonight, observe the gaps in your own experience. The spaces between thoughts, the breaths you pause for, the moments of uncertainty, and the transitions from one belief to another. These gaps aren't failures. They are openings. They represent where existence continues to flow, where potential remains vibrant, where the circle of your awareness keeps turning, never fully shutting itself off from the mystery of what lies ahead. In the soaring mountains where the air thins and the world fades into the distance, there lived a man named Tetsuya who dedicated many years to the pursuit of truth. He journeyed to remote temples, conversed with esteemed sages, and meditated beneath ancient trees until his legs grew numb and his back ached with stillness. One morning, as the first rays of light kissed the mountain tops, Tetsuya opened his eyes and realized it wasn't a grand revelation. There was no dramatic thunder, no voice from the skies, just a serene understanding, like remembering something he had always known but had lost amidst his frantic searching. He sat for a while longer, watching how the light danced across the valley below. Then he rose, collected his modest belongings, and began the lengthy trek back to his village. The descent was familiar. He had traversed it countless times before, hauling questions upwards and doubts down. But this descent felt distinct. His feet naturally found their way over the stones. His breath flowed with ease. The burden he had carried for so long had inexplicably lifted, though he couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it occurred. After several days of walking, Tetsuya reached his village's outskirts. It appeared exactly as he had left it. The same thatched roof houses, the familiar well at the square's heart, the same field stretching toward the woods. An old acquaintance named Dai was at the well drawing water. He looked up as Tetsuya approached, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "You've come back," Dai stated, placing his bucket down. "We were beginning to wonder if you would return from the mountains." "I have returned," Tetsuya replied simply. Dai scrutinized his face for a lengthy moment. "You seem different. Calmer, perhaps. Did you find what you were looking for?" "Yes," Tetsuya responded. "I found it." "Good," Dai said, nodding. That is excellent. Come, walk with me. I was just about to gather firewood. We can talk as we work. Tetsuya trailed his friend along the forest path. The morning sun warmed his back. Birds chirped from the treetops. Everything felt ordinary. Everything was precisely as it should be. They arrived at a glade where fallen trees lay among the underbrush. Dai handed Tetsuya an axe from his cart. It felt heavy and familiar in his grasp. So, tell me, Dai said while positioning a log, what did the masters teach you? What profound wisdom did you gain? Tetsuya raised the axe and brought it down. The blade split the wood with a gratifying crack. He picked up another piece and placed it on the stump. They taught me many lessons, he replied, swinging the axe once more. About emptiness and form, about the essence of the mind, about letting go and being present. And now you understand these lessons. Yes, I believe I do. Dai nodded while splitting his own log. That's wonderful. So, what will you do now? Tetsuya paused, wiping sweat from his brow. He regarded the pile of wood they had already chopped, the forest surrounding them, and his friend's patient expression. I suppose I'll chop wood, he said, and carry water. Just like before, Dai laughed, a deep sound echoing through the trees. Just like before. Then what was the purpose of all those years away? But his eyes sparkled, and Tetsuya recognized that his friend wasn't mocking him. Dai picked up his axe once more. Tell me, his friend inquired, when you chop this wood now, is it different than before you left? Tetsuya contemplated this carefully. He raised his axe and brought it down, experiencing its weight, the wood's resistance, the sound of the split, the scent of freshly cut timber. He had performed this same action countless times before venturing to the mountains. Thousands of times, perhaps. The wood is the same, he said slowly. The axe is the same. My hands are the same. Then what has changed? Tetsuya set down his axe and examined his palms. They were the same hands that had wielded this axe years prior, bearing the same calluses, the same scars from old injuries. Before, he said, when I chopped wood, my mind was always elsewhere. I was preoccupied with what I needed to do next, worrying about whether I had enough wood for winter, longing to be engaged in something more significant, something more meaningful. He picked up another log and placed it deliberately on the stump. Previously, I chopped wood to complete that task. I carried water to finish carrying water. Everything was a chore to accomplish so I could transition to something else. And now, Tetsuya raised the axe and brought it down again. The blade embedded deeply into the wood, cleaving it neatly. Now, I am merely chopping wood, he declared. Just this, nothing more, nothing less. They continued working together in silence for a while. The sun climbed higher in the sky, a journey to understanding. The stack of chopped wood continued to grow. Sweat drenched their garments. This labor was arduous. It had always been strenuous, yet Tetsuya found himself grinning. Later, while they loaded the wood onto the cart, Dai spoke up once more. Do you remember the old Master Fumio from the village? Of course, Tetsuya replied. He passed away while I was in the mountains. Right. Do you recall what he used to say? Dai fastened the last bundle of wood with twine. Before he began his Zen studies, he used to say that mountains were mountains and rivers were rivers. Then, once he started studying Zen, mountains stopped being mountains and rivers ceased to be rivers. But after many years of practice, mountains became mountains again, and rivers became rivers again. I remember that saying, Tetsuya responded. I never grasped its meaning. Do you comprehend it now? As they began to pull the cart back towards the village, Tetsuya mulled it over. The wheels creaked. The wood shifted while settling. His feet found their rhythm along the known path. I believe I do, he finally said. When I first departed from a village, I thought chopping wood was merely chopping wood, a mundane task, nothing noteworthy. Then I discovered presence, mindfulness, and enlightenment. Suddenly, chopping wood transformed into this profound practice. I attempted to chop wood with mindfulness, trying to be present while doing it, aiming to make it a spiritual act. But now, chopping wood is just chopping wood again. Yet, it's different. I'm not trying to make it significant. I'm not striving to make it ordinary. It's simply what it is, and that's sufficient. Dichi smiled but remained silent. They continued the journey homeward in easy silence. Upon arriving in the village, they unloaded the wood close to Dai's house, arranging it carefully for the winter months ahead. Will you remain in the village? Dai inquired once they were done. Or will you return to the mountains? Tetsuya surveyed the familiar homes, the well, the fields. He could hear children playing in the distance, smell the scent of bread baking, and feel the solid ground beneath his feet. I will stay, he declared. The mountains have taught me what I needed to learn, but life is here. The wood needs to be chopped. The water needs to be carried. The fields need attending. Those things have not changed, but you may have changed, perhaps. Or maybe I have just returned to who I always was, beneath all the seeking and striving. That evening, Tetsuya drew water from the village well. The bucket felt heavy as he pulled it up hand over hand. The rope was coarse against his skin, and the water danced and sparkled in the dimming light. He had fetched water from this same well countless times during his youth. Back then, it was merely another task, something to rush through so he could move on to more engaging activities. During his time in the mountains, he had occasionally thought of these ordinary chores with a nostalgic affection, imagining them as profound practices he had been too blind to value. But now, as he drew water from the well, he was doing none of those things. He was neither rushing through a chore nor transforming it into a spiritual practice. He was simply drawing water. His hands pulled the rope. The bucket ascended. The water filled his jar. That was all. That was everything. A young boy from the village approached, carrying a bucket of his own. Master Tetsuya, the boy said shyly, they say you have returned from the mountains, that you've become enlightened. Tetsuya smiled. I have returned from the mountains, yes. Will you teach me what you learned? He asked. Tetsuya handed the boy the rope. Draw water from the well, he instructed. The boy appeared puzzled but complied. He tossed the bucket down and began pulling it back up. "Now what?" the boy queried once his bucket was full. "Now carry it home," Tetsuya said, "but be careful not to spill any. That's all." The boy stood there, evidently expecting something more significant. Tetsuya recognized the look. He had once felt that way too, perpetually in search of hidden meanings, special teachings, and unique practices that would unlock understanding. "When you carry the water," he said gently, "just carry the water. When you have your dinner, just eat your dinner. When you sleep, just sleep. This is the essence of all teachings." The boy nodded slowly, though some confusion lingered on his face. He bowed and walked away, carefully balancing his bucket. Tetsuya picked up his own jar and made his way homeward. The weight of the water felt substantial. His arms grew fatigued. These were facts, neither positive nor negative. Tomorrow, he would chop more wood, draw more water, and tend to the fields. His days would be filled with these ordinary tasks. And in each moment, if he stayed present, if he remained aware of the simple realities occurring around him, there would be nothing left to seek, nothing to achieve, and nowhere else to be. The mountains had imparted the lessons of presence to him. Yet it was here in the village, engaging in these simple acts, where he would truly embody that presence. This was what he had sought all along. Not something extraordinary, not some heightened state of awareness. Just this: the world as it exists, life as it unfolds, one moment after another. As Tetsuya walked, the sun kissed the horizon, saturating the sky with hues of orange and pink. He had witnessed countless sunsets in the mountains, yet this one felt familiar and entirely unique. Like every moment before it, it would never occur again. He smiled, feeling the weight of the water jar against his side, the steadfast ground beneath his feet, and the cool evening air on his skin. He was home. He had always been home. The journey had been crucial to grasp this simple truth. When we hear tales of individuals who traverse great distances in search of wisdom, we often envision their return as a transformation, elevated, somehow altered from their original selves. Tetsuya's tale reveals an entirely different notion. The journey altered everything, yet nothing stayed the same. Reflect on the everyday tasks that fill your life: making coffee, washing dishes, walking to work. The stillness within action. Folding laundry. How frequently do you find yourself fully engaged in such moments? How often do your thoughts wander to what lies ahead or linger on past events? Zen wisdom speaks of a principle that states, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The actions remain unchanged, the environment the same. However, the individual performing these tasks experiences a profound transformation. Tetsuya learned that true insight does not elevate us to a realm beyond the mundane. The dishes will still demand washing, the wood still requires chopping. What truly evolves is the depth of attention we offer to these moments. In his earlier days, Tetsuya's woodcutting was driven by a desire to finish, a mental preoccupation that kept him from being present. The task was simply a means to an end, a chore to endure. Upon returning to the same task after his journey, He engaged in the act of cutting wood with full awareness. His thoughts no longer raced ahead or lagged behind. He experienced the heft of the axe, the resistance of the timber, the sound of the split wood, the earthy aroma of the logs. The action became self-contained, not merely a step towards something else. Though this distinction may seem minor, it transforms everything. When we perpetually regard the present as a hurdle to overcome to reach a more desirable future, we find ourselves perpetually waiting for the essence of life to commence. Examine your own habits. When do you rush through the present in pursuit of what's next? While eating, are you truly savoring your meal, or do you find your mind already anticipating the next activity? In conversations, are you genuinely listening, or are you plotting your response? Tetsuya's newfound wisdom wasn't about altering his life situation. He didn't have to remain in seclusion or don the robes of a monk or renounce the world. Instead, he needed to embrace the life he was already living with full awareness. There lies an additional layer to this narrative that is worth exploring. Tetsuya's companion Dai poses a critical question. What then was the purpose of all those years spent away? It's a valid inquiry. If Tetsuya merely returned to his former life of chopping wood and carrying water, what was achieved through that journey? The answer provides clarity. Sometimes. We must depart in order to return. We need to search in order to no longer feel the need to seek. Without stepping away, Tetsuya could not truly appreciate the value of a simple life. His time spent in the mountains wasn't squandered. It was vital, not because the mountains contained secrets absent from a village, but because he needed to exhaust his quest before he could find peace in simply existing. Many among us resemble the younger Tetsuya, convinced that wisdom is located elsewhere, more profound, more spiritual, or more significant. We believe that by locating the right practice, teacher, or doctrine, we will unlock understanding. Only then will we discover happiness. Only then will life commence. In truth, wisdom isn't concealed elsewhere. It rests right here, in the tasks that require our attention, dishes waiting to be washed, water needing to be carried, wood awaiting cutting. The pivotal question isn't about the worthiness of these chores. Rather, it's whether we will engage with them mindfully as we perform them. Which activities in your life have you dismissed as mere interruptions? What segments of your day do you speed through, barely aware? What if these moments are not barriers to surpass, but experiences waiting to be fully engaged with? The master in the tale articulated that after extensive practice, mountains revert to being mountains, and rivers become rivers once more. But they are not the same mountains and rivers. Instead, we are transformed individuals viewing the same landscapes. There is no need for external shifts in our surroundings to attain tranquility. The conditions of our lives don't require modification. We don't need to find ourselves in different locales, engaging in different activities, or becoming different persons. What we truly need is to be here, fully immersed in the present, being our authentic selves. This may represent one of the most demanding teachings within Zen Buddhism. Its challenge stems from its simplicity. We yearn for intricate rituals, elusive knowledge, and validations for our relentless pursuit of understanding. But the essence is remarkably straightforward. Be present now, fully aware of the reality in front of you. Tetsuya's journey invites us to reassess our own lives. What are you pursuing that you might already possess? What are you striving to attain that you may already be experiencing? What transformation are you anticipating that could simply involve embracing your current self? The wood continues to need cutting, and the water requires carrying. These chores haven't evolved into something more spiritual or valuable. They remain what they've always been, life as it unfolds from one moment to the next. And that is sufficient. In fact, that is more than sufficient. That encompasses everything. In a quaint village nestled amid rice paddies and lush forests resided a young man named Kazuo. He was infamous for his perpetual business, rushing ceaselessly from task to task. His days would begin at dawn, immediately propelling him into action. He meticulously managed his family's fields, performed errands for neighbors, and assisted at the market. From sunrise to sundown, Kazuo remained in constant motion. "Slow down," his mother often implored. "You will exhaust yourself." However, Kazuo could never seem to decelerate. There was always a task that required attention, another responsibility to fulfill, another destination to reach. He navigated through his days like a pebble cascading down a slope, accelerating and unable to halt. One morning, Kazuo had to carry an urgent message to a trader in the adjacent village, or so he thought. To Kazuo, everything bore a sense of urgency. Hastily, he saddled his horse without properly adjusting the gear, neglecting to communicate with the animal or ensure it was adequately prepared for the journey ahead. The moment he mounted, he hastened into the day, driven by the endless rhythm of his busy life. The horse began to stir, and Kazuo barely got comfortable in the saddle before it burst into a trot, swiftly escalating into a canter, then a full gallop. The wind whipped against his face as the ground raced beneath the pounding hooves. Kazuo gripped the reins tightly but refrained from pulling back. The horse was already heading generally toward his destination. Speed was advantageous. Speed meant a swift arrival. Speed allowed him to finish this task and transition to whatever came next. They sped past sprawling rice fields and thick stands of bamboo. They splashed through a shallow brook and ascended a gentle slope. The horse showed no inclination to slow down. If anything, it seemed to surge even faster. An elderly farmer stood by the road, observing their approach. As they raced past, the farmer shouted, "Young man, where are you off to in such a rush?" Kazuo didn't have the luxury to ponder. He responded instinctively, looking back over his shoulder. "I don't know," he said, almost surprised. He hadn't even realized how those words had slipped out until he heard them echo. In that moment, something within him shifted. "I don't know," he repeated, albeit internally. He was riding a horse at breakneck speed, and it struck him that he genuinely had no idea where he was headed. He had a destination, a village, a merchant, a message that needed delivering. Yet right now, he wasn't guiding the horse, it was propelling him along. He felt more like a passenger, holding on tight, convincing himself he was in control of the ride. For the first time in ages, Kazuo became acutely aware of the unfolding experience. He could feel the horse's muscles tautening and relaxing beneath him, his grip on the reins tightening until his knuckles turned white with tension. He sensed how stiff his body had become, battling to remain seated instead of riding harmoniously with the animal. At that moment, a troubling realization hit him. He couldn't recall the last instance when he made a conscious choice about his actions. He was simply waking up and going through the motions as he did every day. He flitted from one obligation to the next, unaware of the constant tasks that awaited him and never pausing to reflect on what he truly wanted to pursue. He felt like a leaf caught in a stream, merely trailing along with the current, devoid of any real agency. Yet, unlike the leaf, he had somehow fooled himself into believing he was guiding the course, that he was at the helm, making decisions. Tentatively, he eased back on the reins, not with force, nor suddenly, just a gentle pressure to gauge the horse's response. The horse paid him no heed and continued at a breakneck speed. Kazuo tugged at the reins more assertively. Still, no change. The animal had its own velocity now, its own sense of direction and pace. "Easy," Kazuo murmured, his voice slightly trembling. "Easy now," he reiterated, pulling back firmly and leaning his weight backward in the saddle. Finally, with a reluctant acceptance, the horse began to decelerate. From a gallop to a canter, from a canter to a trot, and then to a walk, finally halting altogether. Kazuo remained on the horse in the middle of the road. His heart raced and his hands quivered. The horse stood still beneath him, breathing heavily, steam wafting from its coat in the crisp morning air. How long had it been since he had simply stopped like this? Not as a result of reaching a destination or completing a task, but simply to take a break? He looked around. He had no clue where he was. The road extended both behind and ahead of him. Fields spread on either side, and a distant mountain loomed in the background. It might have been anywhere. He had been so focused on reaching his destination, completing his obligations, and managing endless tasks that he had neglected to notice his surroundings. Always leaning forward into the next moment, he was never present in this very moment. Gradually, Kazuo slid off the horse. His legs were unsteady as his feet met the ground. The horse glanced over at him, as if curious about the sudden halt in urgency. "I'm sorry," Kazuo said to the creature, running his hand along its neck. "I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't truly making choices. I just hopped on and let you run." The horse released a long, measured exhale. Together, they stood quietly on the road. Kazuo became aware of his thirst. When had he last paused for water? He realized he was fatigued. When had he last taken a break without guilt? He acknowledged that the urgency behind delivering this message didn't matter. It could wait. Nearly everything could afford to wait. What truly could not wait was the pressing need to be fully present in his own life, to cease pretending that racing through everything constituted living. He led the horse to a stream adjacent to the road. As the horse drank, Kazuo cupped his hands for a drink, too. The water was crisp and refreshing, and he couldn't recall ever having tasted water in such a way before. Had he always ingested it so hastily and carelessly that he had never savored it? They lingered there for what felt like an eternity. Kazuo had no sense of time. It felt different when he wasn't racing against the clock. Eventually, he got back on the horse. But this time, he had changed. He held the reins with focus, yet without desperation. When he urged the horse forward, he felt its response, not because it was determined to go somewhere, but because he was genuinely present, consciously aware, and actively deciding the pace and direction of their journey. Just a leisurely stroll down the road. Kazuo took in everything around him, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the birds happily chirping among the trees, and the earthy aroma of life and growth. When had he last taken note of such wonders? He pondered his life, all the rushing and unceasing activity. He had once perceived himself as productive, efficient, and responsible. Yet now, he questioned whether he had merely been evading something, evading stillness, evading silence, and evading the profound inquiries that arise when one halts long enough to contemplate. What did he genuinely desire? Not what he thought he should yearn for, nor what others anticipated of him, but what did his own heart truly wish for? He didn't have the answer. Title: The Ride of Awareness. He had been so engaged in the endless tasks that he had never taken a moment to inquire. By the time Kazuo arrived at the next settlement, the sun was already high in the sky. The trader was taken aback by Kazuo's deliberate and composed demeanor. "I thought you'd be here much sooner," the trader remarked. The communication was critical. "It came when it needed to," Kazuo replied. He conveyed the information, received the response, and readied himself to head back. However, just before getting on his horse, he hesitated. He ensured the saddle was secure. This occasion was different. He spoke gently to the animal, making his intentions clear. He allowed himself a brief moment to breathe and truly arrive in the moment before embarking on his homeward journey. The ride back was unlike any he had experienced prior. He wasn't in a rush. He didn't let the horse dictate the direction haphazardly. He rode with intention, mindfulness, and presence. He controlled the speed. He chose when to pause and when to continue. It took longer to reach home than it typically would have. Yet, when he finally did, he felt more refreshed than he would have after a full night's sleep. For the first time in years, he had stopped fighting his own experience. He had ceased waging war against the present, no longer striving to push through to some idealized future. His mother regarded him with curiosity upon his dismount. "What happened to you?" she inquired. "What do you mean?" "You seem different, more at peace, as if you were genuinely here." Kazuo grinned. "An elderly farmer asked me where I was headed. I told him I wasn't sure and suggested he consult the horse." His mother chuckled. "And what did the horse reply?" "Nothing, but it taught me to listen." Each day, how many times do you find yourself charging ahead without understanding where you're going? Not out of choice, not because it serves you, but simply because you are in motion and it seems easier to keep going than to stop? This is the plight of the rider who has forgotten they are in control. The horse will move where it wishes. You convince yourself you're directing it. But are you really? Or are you just hanging on for dear life, hoping not to tumble off? Reflect on your habits, your daily routines, the automated actions you take. How many of these were made by conscious choice? How many persist simply because you haven't taken a moment to reflect on them? Each day, we mount our steeds, our work, our relationships, our leisure activities, our thought patterns. Some of these horses serve us well, yet some lead us to destinations we don't truly desire. We grip tight and race forward so quickly that we often fail to recognize this truth. The real query is not whether you can rein in the horse. You have that ability. The reins have always been in your grasp. The real question is, will you? Imagine if you paused right now, not later, not when things calm down, not after finishing everything on your to-do list, but right now. What might occur if you took a moment to ask yourself, where am I headed? Do I truly wish to go there? Am I making this choice or simply being carried by momentum? These are not easy questions. It's far simpler to keep moving, to remain busy, to allow the horse to gallop while pretending you are steering. Yet, if we aim to lead our own lives rather than being swept away by them, we must eventually take hold of the reins. Kazuo's revelation came when he recalled his own reply, "I don't know. Ask the horse." Sometimes, we need to truly hear ourselves to acknowledge the reality of our circumstances. Pay attention to your words. Notice how you justify your choices. How often do you say, "I have to," when what you really mean is, "I've chosen to, but I'm not sure why"? How frequently do you say, "I can't," when what you mean is, "I'm too afraid to"? The rider who recognizes they aren't in control faces a choice. They can panic, exacerbating the situation, or they can breathe, ground themselves, and gradually begin to reclaim their sense of control, not by force or struggle, but by being present, attentive, and making conscious choices. What would it mean to take charge of your life? Not to dominate every aspect, not to fight against change, but simply to be aware and present enough to ensure you're actively making decisions rather than just being swept along by inertia. Some habits are beneficial. Some routines aid us. The goal isn't to eradicate all behavior patterns and start anew. The aim is to gain awareness of our actions and the reasons behind them. To discern when we are truly choosing and when we are merely being carried along. You needn't transform everything at once. Kazuo didn't leap from his horse and walk the remainder of the journey. He merely paused. He breathed. He allowed himself to be fully present in the moment. From there, he could ride with consciousness instead of operating on autopilot. Identify one aspect of your life that you do automatically, without thought, just one thing. It needn't be monumental. It could be how you begin your day, how you respond to specific individuals, how you occupy your free time. Can you raise your awareness about it? Can you take a moment before engaging in it to ask, do I genuinely want to do this? Is this serving me? Am I making this choice? You may find that, yes, you genuinely wish to continue with it, and that's perfectly acceptable. The purpose isn't to change everything, but to choose, to be present, to grasp the reins. Or you might come to realize that this habit no longer benefits you. It's simply momentum, an outdated pattern. When you see this for what it is, you can opt for a different course of action, not with force or willpower, but through gentle, clear awareness that empowers you to respond differently. The horse will continue to gallop if you allow it. That's simply how horses, habits, and momentum behave. But you don't have to let it. The reins are within your control. They have always been yours. The only inquiry is whether you will take hold of them and begin to guide your own life. Kazuo returned to his village altered from how he had departed, not due to external changes, but because he had ceased to be a mere passenger in his own existence. He had taken up the reins, and from that point forward, he journeyed with purpose and presence, awake at this moment. From now on, wherever your path leads, let it be intentional, driven by choice, with awareness of your actions and their purpose. This opportunity is available to you as well. Right here, right now, you can halt the chaotic rush. You can pause, breathe, and acknowledge your current reality and whether it aligns with where you truly wish to be. One deliberate choice at a time, you can guide your own existence instead of letting life carry you along. The tumult of life will be present tomorrow. The momentum will continue. The habits, routines, and patterns will persist. Yet you have the capacity to engage with them in new ways. Rather than being overwhelmed by external forces, you can interact with these energies, redirect them, or simply slow down enough to gain clarity. What is your destination? Are you aware? Perhaps we should consult the horse. We have journeyed through numerous tales tonight, narratives of travelers and fishermen, of students and mentors, of commonplace individuals unearthing profound truths in their daily lives. Each tale differed from the last. However, they each led us to the same fundamental insight. Tranquility isn't somewhere out there. It doesn't lie in the future, awaiting your arrival. It is not obscured behind a distant doctrine or practice. It exists in this very moment, in the simplicity of being alive and conscious. The weight you bear can be released. The worries that disturb your peace can rest for the evening. The striving, seeking, and attempts to decipher every nuance can pause, if only for now. During these serene hours of stillness, you have listened. You have been present. That is ample. More than sufficient. The wise ones whose narratives we explored this evening uncovered a straightforward truth. They discovered that wisdom is uncomplicated. It doesn't necessitate specialized knowledge or years of training. It only requires that we be wholly present for the life we are truly experiencing. Tomorrow will present its own tasks and hurdles, but that day has yet to arrive. Tonight, there is just this: the rhythm of your breath flowing in and out, your body relaxing into the moment, the gentle darkness surrounding you. Nothing needs changing for you to find deep rest. You don't need to resolve your dilemmas first. You don't have to morph into someone else or attain further goals. You can relax just as you are, precisely where you stand at this moment. Allow your breathing to slow down. Let your thoughts soften. Sink into the profound tranquility of not requiring anything to change. The tales have been told, the lessons imparted. Now, all that remains is slumber. Deep, restorative, natural slumber. May your rest be fulfilling. May you awaken rejuvenated. May you carry, even in a small capacity, the simple truth that serenity is perpetually accessible in the present. The night envelops you gently. There is nowhere you need to be but here, nothing to decipher or comprehend. The stories have accomplished their purpose, now fading like ripples in water, leaving a serene stillness in their wake. If thoughts drift through your mind, allow them to. They will come and go like clouds traversing the sky. There's no need to stop them or pursue them. Simply acknowledge their presence and redirect your focus to the soothing pattern of breathing in and out, rising and falling. The breath that has accompanied you since your first moment will cradle you softly into sleep. The fisherman's nets are drawn in for the night. The calligrapher's brush rests. The traveler has reached the gates of the monastery, as you two have arrived precisely where you are meant to be, here and now, safe within the embrace of darkness. There is great grace in permitting yourself to rest, not due to entitlement or merit, but merely because rest is an inherent aspect of existence, like breathing, like the transition from day to night. Sleep arrives when you no longer resist it, when you yield to the present moment and trust that you can relinquish your grasp. Everything requiring attention will await your return come morning. Everything awaiting resolution can remain unaddressed until then. For now, you can embrace this gentle descent into sleep, this gradual release of the day, this quiet return to the profound peace that is perpetually present beneath our busyness and concern. The ancient sages would proclaim that sleep represents a form of meditation, a natural letting go that manifests when we cease our attempts to cling. Your body possesses the inherent ability to do this. It has always known how. All you need to do is grant it permission. Trust the wisdom that resides within your being, in your breath, in the age-old rhythms that flow effortlessly through you. Feel the weight of your body against the surface supporting you. Recognize how the earth cradles you, upholding you, asking nothing in return. You are always supported, perpetually held. Even when forgetfulness washes over you, even during times of solitude or confusion, the ground remains solid. The breath continues its flow. Life unfolds softly, quietly, ensuring you are carried into rest. In this moment, there are no problems to unravel, no queries demanding answers, no roles you are required to play or evolve into. Just this living body, this aware being, this simple truth of existence here and now, which is all that is necessary. It has always sufficed. The accounts told of fishermen and wayfarers, of monks and farmers and calligraphers, but they were ultimately narratives reflecting you, the experience you are immersed in, about the weights you carry and the tranquility that emerges when you cast them aside, about the mundane moments that encapsulate the sacred when we finally open our eyes. Allow slumber to envelop you like water finding its equilibrium, effortlessly, without striving. Just a smooth settling into what is already present. Your eyelids are heavy, or perhaps they're not. Your thoughts are still, or they may not be. Both scenarios are perfectly acceptable. Sleep will arrive in its own time, in its own manner, and there's no need to pursue it. Rest well, and thank you for being present with us here at